Hey everybody, two things. First, I just want to say a quick thank you and Happy New Year to all of our Patreon backers at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Second thing I want to say is that our guest today, Richard, is on the other side of the world and there was significant Skype delay. I did my best to edit around it, but there are definitely places where I missed it, and I ask for your grace. And but it's worth it because he brings amazing insight, and I hope you love the episode. Thanks.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
This is the hunter's nightmare, where hunters end up when drunk with blood. Turn back before it's too late. Unless you've something of an interest in nightmares.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
My name is Richard Pilbeam.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a nightmare favorite.
Yes, and this week we are beginning our discussion of the Old Hunters DLC, specifically the first area, the Hunter's Nightmare. And as you heard, we are joined by Richard Pilbeam of the YouTube channel Jerks Sans Frontiers. Specifically, he drew our attention with the Bloodborne Up Close series. Hey, Richard, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, I stumbled across Richard a couple months ago, and people, astute listeners probably heard me mention his work, and hopefully you all went out there and subscribed because it is super, super cool. We were discussing in the green room kind of thing. Like, I love how the Souls games support these various levels of zoom. Like, we're fairly, like, a review is really zoomed out, and then what we do where it's like area by area is a little bit more zoomed in. And then what Richard does is like zoomed in, like literal zoom in, like with the monocular, zoom in. Do you want to kind of, for people who are not familiar, kind of explain what you do and how you came to it?
Well, I do what's basically like a lore story analysis series, but I focus mostly on visual details and environmental design and things like that, as opposed to focusing on the item descriptions and the dialogue and stuff like that. Because I think that Bloodborne, it has probably the best developed and most detailed environment they've done, and it's using that to tell its story in a way that, like, Dark Souls and especially Dark Souls 2 didn't really use their environments in that way. They told it through item descriptions. Particularly Dark Souls 2, which is like almost entirely told through item descriptions. You wouldn't really get a sense of how things fit together in that game without reading stuff. Right. Whereas in Bloodborne, like I've got a half-hour video that's just me talking about Hemwick. And like Hemwick is mentioned in one item description in the whole game, which is the Bone Marrow Ash. But then if you go to Hemwick and you just kind of like very slowly walk through and just take in the surroundings, you actually get a real sense of what this place is and what its function is and how it connects to the rest of Yharnam and stuff like that. And that's all implicit in the area design, and it's implicit in sort of the way that characters dress and the weapons they use and the items that are lying around and stuff like that. So that's what I look at, basically just wandering around with the monocular.
If you haven't watched the videos, it's really cool because it's zoom, it's down to like accessories and stuff. Like, what is this monster wearing? Yeah. Like, who wore it best? Yeah. This, tooth monster, this eyeball monster. And the, just like little like flaps of skin that are suggestive of other things. And one of the things I like about it is that it allows, like we talked about this in the last episode, how a lot of Bloodborne, I feel like some of it is, some of that stuff is a little bit fuzzy or open to a lot of interpretation. And this, I feel like what you do is also open to a lot of the,
definitely
open to a lot of this interpretation, but it's still, it adds up. So it's like a preponderance of evidence or like a wealth of detail. Yeah. And even if you don't end up coming away with a concrete idea of things, having those details and so many of them just works to reinforce the suggestion of something.
Yeah, it's more texture to make sure you can maintain your grip.
Yeah, like texture
yeah,
over text.
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is super, super cool. And they're not like, it's something, the Bloodborne Souls lore community is, there are a lot of people doing work and a lot of people doing really great work.
Hmm.
But I haven't seen anybody do something quite like this. And
Yeah.
that's, what kind of drew me to it.
The attention to visual detail. Like, are you an incredibly visually focused person in your day to day, in your professional life?
Well, when I was an undergraduate, I studied film production, so
Okay.
I've got a sort of sense of production design. But right now, I'm a researcher. I'm a doctoral researcher, and so I tend to just sort of look at small details and try to figure out like patterns and things in them. So that's probably influenced my methodology.
Yeah.
Have you always been a fan of the series? Did you kind of, because I noticed you started creating stuff with Bloodborne. Is it something that you've been playing these games the entire time, or did you get into it a little bit later?
I've been a fan of From Software actually since the first Armored Core on PlayStation 1.
Mm-hmm.
But then I sort of like I sat out a couple of console generations like after I left high school. And I came back in when Demon Souls was released on PSN just because I thought, oh, it's From Software. I remember them from Armored Core.
Yeah.
So I played that, and that's got extremely good environmental design as well. And then I played Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2. I love both of those games, but they don't have, I think, they're very broad. They have a very sort of epic scope to them, whereas Demon Souls, it's one kingdom, so everything feels very kind of intimate and everything is linked. And
No.
Bloodborne has the same feel to it, whereas you look at Dark Souls, like that's just a massive game.
Mhm.
And as a result, the detail is spread a bit more thin because the experience itself is so broad.
Yeah.
And like they all appeal to me in different ways, but like Bloodborne is definitely the one where I'm really into the environment. And I actually had someone comment on a video I did on Canehurst saying that she was a really big fan of the Canehurst area specifically, and that made her want to play the other Souls games. And she went back to play Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, and she found the worlds like quite unengaging in comparison to Bloodborne, because she said they felt to her like they were like a stage set or just like a level that was designed to facilitate gameplay rather than an environment that existed on its own terms. And I think Bloodborne really, really does that in a way that the other ones haven't. And I'm really looking forward to Dark Souls 3 because it looks like they might be continuing on this direction.
I wonder how much of that has to do with, so I've been finally getting other use out of my PS4 other than just as a Bloodborne machine, and like noticing that being one of the big things with the step up in graphical fidelity is like the clutterification of games.
Yeah.
Like you would, I feel like you would posit that like for something like Bloodborne, like having this ability to have dozens of small objects and really minute texture details is a real boon. And like, whereas like, so that's something that like, and I would agree, for the most part. And then something where like in say like Arkham Knight, like I think it's a real detriment.
Yeah.
This kind of idea that like you can put dozens and dozens of tiny objects on the screen at all times. And it's kind of cool to see that, because that's would be one of the big differences in the previous Souls games, is that like they feel a little bit like sets, partly because they just can't have as much going on.
Yeah, or if they have a lot going on, it's a lot of repeated stuff. See the Astrolabe factory. And,
Astrolabe factory, the statue deposit, statue for Emporium. Yeah.
But see, like I would say that Demon Souls had a, not to the same degree, but a very, very well developed environment. And that graphically kind of just looks like a slightly higher resolution PS2 game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the amount, like that the Boletarian Palace, like that whole area is in terms of like just stuff you can intuit by just wandering around it, that's up there with Canehurst in terms of like detail.
Yeah.
It's low poly detail.
I would love to see you do some stuff on Demon Souls, because there's a real dearth of Demon Souls love.
Franz, a German spy, he has an LP called Demon Souls in Depth, where he basically does what I'm doing now, but he's doing it in the style of a Let's Play. And he wanders around. It's like an hour or something of him just wandering around Boletaria with the spyglass, just looking at everything and talking about, like this is the quarters where the knights would eat, and here's like where the stables are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen that. I'm familiar with him, but I have not seen that specific Let's Play. So
that's basically what I'm ripping off, just without the Let's Play spec. Because by the time I was ready, everyone had already Let's Played Bloodborne, and I'm like, there's no point doing this.
We have to chop this up a bit more.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, we're really, really happy to have you, and
Thank you.
I'm
happy to
subscriber, and look forward to seeing what the rest of what you do, including segue, your stuff on the DLC.
Yes.
Yeah, because we're talking about the Hunter's Nightmare here. Cool. What did we do last time?
Well, last time we finished the main game of Bloodborne proper by either killing or being killed by Gehrman, the first hunter, but the ending of the main game before this DLC came out was fairly ambiguous. There was a lot of unanswered questions, right? And so, fortunately, with this DLC, there's a place where hunters go, and there's a place where we can go and find some answers, because the hunters were omnipresent but very poorly explained. And now we're going to get to the bottom of exactly where they fit in the world of Yharnam.
Yeah, and get ultimately, and this is mild spoilers. We should probably say there'll be some spoilers for the entire DLC. Like all spoilers are still off,
right?
But also let's get Bergenworth's hands dirty. Like I'm sick of those effete intellectuals, their ivory tower. So let's get them in the muck. Similar to Scholar of the First Sin, this released as a DLC and then also kind of a patch, or like a new version and a patch. So everyone got this kind of patch that added some content that we haven't addressed before that we're going to address here, starting with the League, which is a covenant.
Yeah, so this patch, it was there primarily so you could get the weapons and stuff by some kind of circuitous means. But this covenant, it's a bit of a shadow version of the of Solaire's covenant, of the what is it? I forget the name of it even now.
Warriors of Sunlight?
Yes, the Warriors of Sunlight, yeah.
I knew the answer, but I was testing you.
Well, I could, as Heirs of the Sun, no, that's from 2. I didn't want to make myself sound like an ass, but I'm explaining it too much. But you find this new NPC in the Forbidden Woods. His name is Voltaire, and he's kind of behind the shortcut to the elevator by the first lamp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's got a big goofy helmet.
Like Solaire. He's got a bucket head. He's Buckethead.
Yeah. He's the unknown
guitarist.
Phantom.
Yeah.
He's Buckethead. And he's kind of like I really like Voltaire. He's weirdly, when you first run into him, a little bit cartoonish for Bloodborne.
He's very broad. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very broad. He's like the wacky neighbor, like the Bloodborne wacky neighbor here. Even though he's the Beast Eater, which is badass and awesome. At least starting out, is just like, oh, okay, this guy is kind of a goof. He's talking about, it's almost like he's making fun of the plot. Where he's like, oh, there are these wretched beasts and freak slugs and mad doctors, which is the most reductive way to describe Bloodborne's story that I can think of. And he's dressed up as the constable, which is these we'll learn this from item descriptions in the DLC, are from a foreign land. And this specific Valtier, was the sole survivor of a beast attack, and who then ate the beast, which is metal and awesome.
Yeah. And so if you decide to kind of throw your lot in with the League, you're given the ability to see kind of what's at the heart of this corruption. I think that's why he's being so dismissive of the beasts and the doctors and the slugs, because to a member of the League, all of this iniquity stems from these little centipede-like creatures. These vermin, found hidden within filth, are the root of man's impurity. Perhaps there is some mercy in the madness. Those who wish to see the vermin can, and those who choose to are provided with boundless purpose, which is really just a smokescreen, it seems, for the ability to kill with impunity.
Maybe. See, I don't know. I think maybe it wasn't a smokescreen to begin with, but at this point, Voltaire is just completely mad. Because his helmet's got one eye hole,
right?
And if there's like, the thing about Voltaire is, if you kill him, you get his helmet, and then if he dies as part of his quest progression, you get his helmet as well. And the description changes depending on how Voltaire ends up dying. And I can't remember which one it is. I think it's if you progress the quest, but it says that he's only got one eye hole because his other eye is rotted out.
Right.
The implication is, like, because we get this item called the Eye of the Blood Drunk Hunter, which mentions this, that as the scourge progresses, one of your eyes starts rotting out. So at this point, like, Voltaire seems to have, like, he's succumbing to the scourge. And I think it's some other weapon or item that he's associated with, mentions that he lost the ability to actually see the vermin a long time ago. So it's like, for him, for him, maybe it's just an excuse to go out and kill, but that doesn't mean that like it's necessarily a covenant specifically for psychopaths. We don't know.
Right. The way he presents it is very much, it very much reads as like it would have been ripped from the villain's notebooks in Seven.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Like it reads like a madman's justification. Like the
he's
line
like that. Yeah. The classic sort of Souls NPC who's a single-minded, obsessed with one purpose, to the exclusion of everything else.
The vermin item description is one of the more on-the-nose thematic descriptions, up there with that like Faded Ember, with like this whole like those who wish to see the vermin can, and those who choose to are provided with boundless purpose. Like it kind of feels like it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit. You know, like it implies that you're doing it for the purpose, as opposed to just like saying that like. Underlining that it provides you with purpose is not something that you usually see as a motivating factor in things.
Yeah.
It's weird. I've read a lot of stuff about vermin online, and I still haven't read anything I really love about how vermin fit into the game.
It's weird because this does something that the DLC does a lot, which is kind of duplicates things. Why would a hunter go and kill other hunters? Well, they may be Eileen and they may be a hunter of hunters, or they may just be on the frenzy and trying to get more blood, or they may be like, this is another reason to provoke people to go out and kill more.
Yeah. What I was going to say was that in like Japanese like spiritual symbolism, the idea of the centipede writhing within filth it's like a common sort of motif. Like the centipede is seen as an animal that's very close to filth and corruption. So the vermin makes sense from that point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah. The root of corruption would be a centipede.
It makes sense in that way. It's weird. I guess when I say I was having a hard time placing it, I almost mean like narratively, like something like where it ends up. It feels like a little bit like it's answering a question that wasn't asked in some respects.
They seem like the parasite, maggot, worm, grub things you see like around. You see they come out of the silver beast in there. It seems like that maybe the vermin are similar to that, because there's like the bloodletting beast, which is like it's implied that that's got some massive connection to the whole corrupted blood in Yharnam kind of saga. And when you get the headless version you get it down to half health, it's got a massive worm in it.
Yeah.
And it feels like maybe the vermin are like, that's what these maggots were supposed to be, and then that was cut out and they've reintroduced it as the vermin.
Yeah. And came up with kind of posited different reasons for it. Just when Cole, when you mentioned like the thing, like it answers questions twice, like I feel like there are some things that the DLC does that. And in almost every case, I like the DLC kind of narrative reason more. And we talked about that in the last episode.
Well, it also sucks because this posits that the reason anybody does anything bad ever is because of one of these bugs somewhere inside them.
Yeah, I mean, is that the idea? Because that's monumentally unsatisfying.
Yeah.
I was talking with someone, actually Redgrave, the guy who wrote the Pale Blood Hunt, about this, and I was like, if you watch The Exorcist and there's like the possessed kid and she's vomiting green stuff everywhere, like the story there isn't the kid's got too much green stuff, we need to bring in a stomach pump, then she'll be all right. The issue is that she's possessed and that's manifesting as the green vomit that she's vomiting everywhere. So to me, it seems like the vermin are, it's like everyone's impure and the vermin are like a manifestation of the impurity.
Yeah.
Rather than the vermin cause the impurity.
Or exactly. They have to be on top of or a symptom of or connected to as opposed to being instead of, because instead of is really kind of dumb.
I also like the idea that this is a kind of mass hysteria. I don't like that word. Sorry. Kind of a shared hallucination. Because by becoming a part of this covenant, you get a rune, the impurity rune, that nets you these vermin when you perform successful like co-op sessions, right? And so these only show up when there's there's totally a bug here, right? Yeah, dude, there's totally a bug here.
Yeah, and like the corruption rune, obviously, it's in your brain. So like it could be doing something to you where you're seeing these things that aren't necessarily there.
Yeah, you get into the kind of unreliable narrator stuff that is is true of most fiction, but is super true of a game that, deals with nightmares and dreams and liminal states. Like, even though, and we talked about it a lot, like, I understand that nothing is all a dream, but there is some kind of, we can't always trust what's actually happening.
When you progress Volta's quest line, you do it by crushing these vermin that you find after co-ops. And the way that he knows you've done it is he says, the look in your eyes says that you've done this, but he hasn't witnessed it.
Right.
So this could be some like hallucination thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It is, yeah.
It's not like the sunlight metals where like that seems to be that's like actually a form of currency that you're doing something with kind of in reality.
Yeah.
Volta is just like, you look like you've seen some shit.
Yeah. You come back, it's like Born on the 4th of July.
You're
like
flying, so you must have this pink feather. Yeah.
Vermin and nom. As far as the big mechanical thing this adds is, I love that there are now summons for a lot of boss fights, which is something that I wish had been in the main game.
Definitely, yeah.
I feel like if you're not great at Bloodborne, like, we were officially the podcast that, has no tolerance for get good. Like, you should still be able to enjoy the game. So having some help for some of these boss fights is great.
Yeah.
And weirdly, like, some of the guys that you summon are characters who are dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you can summon Henrik after you've killed him.
Yeah, and that happens again in the DLC.
Yeah, which kind of connects with the whole like nightmare thing. So did like Henrik die and pass on to the nightmare, and now we're calling him back out of the nightmare again? And it's really sort of interesting implications.
We talked about this a little bit in the Chalice episodes, but like these summons pop up throughout the main game as well. Even in the Chalices, and that even like you can summon a version of Alfred, or what is applied to be a stand-in for Alfred, the Queen Killer.
Yeah. His like dark side or what have you. Which I still couldn't, for people who are asking on Twitter and stuff, I did verify that the Queen Killer did drop an item when I fought Yarnum, but I still cannot see what item it is because his he died message is in front of it. But I checked my video, and it's not a hallucination; like, it actually happened.
I'll have to look out for that, because I haven't gotten to Yarnum post DLC yet, so I'll keep an eye out for that.
Let's talk about how we get to the nightmare.
Yes. So this is not a place you can go right away. If you start a new game with the old hunters installed, you have to get, a fair bit through the game, about 1/3. You gain access to this after you kill Vicar Amelia, when a messenger appears on the stairs in the hunter's dream, kind of by where you got your first weapons and stuff, and he carries the eye of a blood drunk hunter.
Yep. And this says, so the eye of a blood-drunk hunter, its pupil is collapsed and turned to mush, indicating the onset of the scourge of beast. A hunter who goes drunk with blood is said to be taken by the nightmare, destined to wander forever, engaged in an endless hunt. It is a fate that no hunter can escape.
Yeah, and so this sets up this mythology of where you're headed as this kind of perverted Valhalla.
Yeah, and the DLC itself is going to be about getting to the bottom of why this is happening.
Right.
Why this is happening to these characters. There's kind of, when you pick it up, it kind of tells you where you might need to go. But I just ended up looking it up. It's pretty annoying, actually. It's a specific amygdala, and it's, you could be forgiven a little bit because amygdalas do transport you to nightmares. Like, it's happened before, but just knowing which amygdala and where to go.
And like, is that specific? It's the Erden amygdala.
Yeah.
But like, all the other amygdala are in Yahar'gul, and there's just this one amygdala that hangs around outside Erden.
Yeah.
And it's so peculiar because, like, why is there one amygdala outside Erden and nowhere else?
He's here to take you. He's the Hunter's Nightmare Express.
Now we know why he's there.
Yeah,
because like I assumed in like the base game that it was there because of Ariana's child.
Oh yeah,
but then of course that cannot happen. That depends on your own choices. So, but he's there all the time anyway.
Yeah. Well, the economy is tough. It's like he picked up an Uber. Like he's doing some extra shifts to make. You
got to make his loan payments.
Make blood echoes. Get some blood echoes to rub together.
Yeah.
And have you noticed that weird room in Erden where we get the Blood Gem Workshop tool?
Mm-hmm.
That room is so strange because it looks like it's like a miniature version of Bergenworth.
A little bit, yeah. It's got the
Yeah.
bookcases and the
It's got
work tables and stuff. Yeah.
And the arrays with the solar system and all that. And it's got a note about the Bergenworth spider.
Mm-hmm.
And that room's never explained.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's like underneath Erden, we've got this little like Bergenworth room. So it seems like maybe this might have been like a trial run for Yahagul where they did like a little summon. And like one amygdala showed up and like, okay, it works. That's our control experiment. Now we're going to do the proper thing in Yahagul.
And then they couldn't get rid of it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it just,
They just didn't care.
yeah, it just hung out. You just get used to
It's
it.
just,
Yeah. I mean, it saves you on like trash bills and stuff. You just
no one can
throw-
see it.
you just put tonsil stones next to your bags of trash.
Yep.
And get the amygdala to teleport them to another
Yeah.
plane.
Why do you think the nightmare's full of all that shit? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that idea.
wait a minute. If the Blood Gem workshop tool, if that room is a miniature Bergenworth, is that the branch? Is that where like people go for 2 years to get their
Their associates.
to get their associates?
Yeah,
before-
community
That
Bergenworth.
room is so because like the workshop tool's been misplaced from the Hunter's Dream.
All right.
So, and like the guy who gives you the key to get into that room's Gascoigne, because he's locked the gate behind him, and the door out of that room's closed, and it's just really strange because it's like, and like Gascoigne's got the music box that plays Lullaby for Murgo, which is like that song diegetically exists within the game as a song for Murgo, and it's so like. It's so weird, that whole, but I don't want to get off track. But I mean, that area is bizarre.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It is out of context, and it's never quite reconciled, except very meekly by the fact that there is a connection between Bergenworth and the church.
Yeah.
And when this amygdala grabs you, you hear a woman's voice who says, "Curse the fiends, their children too, and their children forever true." Introducing the kind of rhymey sing-song nature of a lot of the direct text and narration we're going to get.
Yeah. I
the DLC.
love this. I love the fact that they picked that motif and stuck with it.
Yeah. And this is going to make a lot of sense a little bit later. For now, it's just it's not children.
We were talking about this like before we recorded, but like the way the DLC tells the story is it'll drop something in front of you that doesn't make any sense now, and then it will explain it later on in the DLC in the later area. Suddenly, everything will make sense.
It's got
But to a
memento
degree.
disease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool to piece it together. Like it
Yeah.
ends up making that kind of Souls game as archaeology feeling, as far as like a compact area that sets up and resolves its mysteries in one place. I feel like we haven't seen anything that's quite this contained.
Yeah.
In that respect,
It's taking advantage of the fact that it's structured in a completely linear way because
Yes.
it can dole out information to you and it knows what you've already seen.
Yeah. There's
Which you couldn't do if you were like going between different areas at your own like volition.
Yeah, there's a fantastic article on Eurogamer that gives a little bit of a lore summary of the DLCs, and its major kind of thesis, if I can lay this out, is that these are presented in reverse chronological order, which sets up these amazing moments like this, where you get a piece of information that seems nonsensical, if not thematically relevant or resonant, out of context, and then later, much later, when you've even forgotten you experienced that thing, probably, it makes much more sense in hindsight.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Does good work. Let's and so you get teleported into this nightmare version of the Erden Chapel, Chapel of Erden, and it's cool because the it's going to look weird and nightmare-y, but at first the differences are subtle. Like there are differences between this the Chapel of Erden and the nightmare version, but they save the big reveal, like the stepping outside moment, initially. But so when you get outside, it is familiar. It's Yharnam, but everything is kind of covered with this like tree bark, or I was looking at them today.
Yeah,
Almost
it's
looks
the
like close-up
same
fingerprints.
kind of. You see it in the amygdala boss room in the Nightmare Frontier. The rock with these weird like striations in it. It almost looks like muscle tissue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like what is it, like limestone or sandstone, where it's laid
Yes.
across in kind of sheets, like it's a cross section of that. And that kind of irregular mineral surface is kind of ubiquitous across the Nightmare, right?
Yeah, and the monoliths that have like the crack down the middle, and you can see like blood and sort of sinew in between.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is
Yeah.
that's why I was connecting it with striations in muscle tissue, because it sort of looks like this is organic stuff that's turned to stone, but you can still, the kind of gooey stuff is still in the middle, like a chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
delicious stuff.
Yep, you're getting some blood from a stone chunk. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the way that it's laid out and the way that this stuff is corrupting the area speaks to that classic Souls, like, I mean, corruption or kind of uncontrolled growth.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting to see it juxtaposed with the order of a city, because when you're in Yharnam, as far as, you know, even the urban areas we've seen before in Souls games, like Yharnam is the best or the most laid out in you know, straight kind of vertical lines, and it's very orderly. You know, it's a little confusing to get around, but it's not like you know, when you're in the Undead Burg or what have you, and it feels like things are kind of building out and kind of chaotic.
Yeah, they're
like
not very ad hoc.
It's an orderly city. It has streets and it has, you know, and this is just, it's corrupting it and disturbing it in a way that's, you know, literally, you know, turning buildings sideways.
Yeah. It's very
you know,
kind of Lost Izalith.
Yeah.
Just with these sort of rock things instead of the tree roots.
It's like the absolute reverse of erosion is happening. This stone is building up around everything, forcing it apart.
Yeah.
And you see a tomb mold growing like around the place.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that? Yeah.
No, I didn't notice that, but that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, because tomb mold's supposed to grow in blood, like after you leave it for a while.
This place gets pretty bloody.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to see some
There's
blood.
a bit later on.
Yeah. But yes, I love how this kind of takes, because we've seen minor versions of this with specifically the Nightmare of Mensis, but also there's a little bit in the Nightmare Frontier where it's something that's slightly familiar, but a nightmare perverted, twisted version of it. You know, this is recognizable in much the same way that, what is it, the King's Forest in the Artorias of the Abyss DLC is similar to Darkroot a little bit. You can recognize the structures. It's more overt here, but it's definitely there. And what I'm saying is the Old Hunters DLC is a cash grab, and they just reused assets.
Yeah. Well, for a brief moment, I was disappointed that I was in a similar area. Like for a moment before I realized, like, to the degree that the nightmare muscle growth changed the traversal and changed things, and before I actually got to the areas that are straight up new, I thought, oh, I'm going to do this part of the game, but it's going to be, you know, full of this stuff. Great. You know, I trusted them. I didn't actually think that was going to be the case, but I was kind of sympathetic to that idea at first. But I think that, you know, as soon as you start going up the stairs, you'll realize that it's, you know, very, very different. And it's not the same area,
which
or
is
same game
like,
you've played
again,
before.
an advantage of it being such a linear structure that it can shove you in this like almost normal area and then gradually get stranger because it knows you have to go through it this way. Yeah.
You're introduced to your first enemy on the stairs here, on your way up, which is a hunter, which is, you know, one, like, it's they were listening to me where, like, the hunter fights are the best fights in this game, you know, so you get to do a lot of them. Like, it's, if you like parrying people, this is a really fun area to move through. But I love how the first hunter, you know, the first hunters you run into here are all armed with new weapons for you as a kind of a preview. Like, it's an enemy that can use your moves and are doing cool new things that you'll be able to do soon. So when I first saw this weapon, the strength version of the sword cane, I can't remember the name of it right now.
The Beast Cutter.
I was just really excited to see it because I'm like, oh, I want that. You know, and I got it.
I want that, but also I don't quite know how it behaves just yet.
Yeah, and you get to watch it in action. So which is, you know, pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's strong design. Look at something else. Use this so you can anticipate it and get it yourself. Some of these hunters have hunting dogs, which are just dogs. The beast here are much more interesting though, because they are, you know, non-aggressive, more or less. Like,
well, not only are they non-aggressive, they actively cower from
they cower. which makes me think that like if this is hell for hunters, what is it for these guys?
Ultra hell.
Yeah, super hell. Like it's death for the damned.
Yeah. These are modeled after or resemble the patient beasts from Old Yarnum, by the way.
Yeah.
But yes, they
and of course those ones will back away in the same way if you've got fire out.
Yes.
These ones do it all the time.
Everything is fire. It's like Angela from Silent Hill 2.
And the hunters will aggro the beast before they aggro you.
Right.
Because they're stuck in this purgatory of hunting beasts. And I love how the beasts are not challenging for them. Like it makes it feel like it adds to, you were saying that's kind of a reverse Valhalla. That adds a wrinkle to it, which is literally them just hunting down non-aggressive, cowering, pathetic enemies for eternity.
Yeah.
Shades of a certain thing that happened.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, some peaceful puppers got skull scraped.
You are not kind of sticking to the cobblestone here. As you are kind of progressing through these familiar areas, the grand staircase through to the plaza where you originally fought kind of some of the church giants and stuff like that. You're mostly breaking from that because of the gates and walking around on the rock outcroppings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which really changes the kind of the topography of the stage.
And they're introducing the density of new items and everything here too. Because you pick up new armor and weapons, in this first area with a frequency that isn't matched in the rest of the game. And it's one that I really like. One, for that conveyance of information. And two, just it felt good to get a bunch of new shit to play with in cool fashion souls, for traversing this pretty challenging area. Like, this kind of density of hunter fights we haven't seen before. And hunter fights are fun, but they're also some of the more challenging ones in the game.
Yeah, and situations in the main game where there's more than one hunter are always very challenging. Think of the gang squad in Yahar Ghul. Think of the two that are outside of the amygdala that takes you to the Nightmare Frontier. Except here, they cover each other very, very well.
Yeah. And your kind of saving grace are those beasts,
right?
That will distract them.
Because it's full of these little, like, hunter versus beast, or later on you see hunters versus this weird kind of tentacle executioner thing set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of, the impression I got is that that's kind of stuff they maybe wanted to do in the base game, and for some reason they couldn't get the AI working.
The kind of set piece things where you stumble
across the kind of set pieces
these,
with hunters actually fighting beasts.
Yeah, as opposed to just waiting to kill you.
Yeah, like I know you both love the Chalice dungeons.
Famous for
I'm playing one right now.
Soul kind of roaming ones that you find. It's like a boss called the beast, but you will occasionally find it outside as just like a regular mob.
Yeah,
if you lead that near, it has the same kind of AI pattern that the hunters here in the Nightmare have, where it will just attack whatever is closest to it, regardless of whether it's you or an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So and there's one of those like locked up in a silo in a lower part of Yharnam. But it will never leave the silo. Its AI kind of tethers it there. But it makes me think that like maybe this specific thing was like they designed it with the intent that it would go rampaging around like Yharnam murdering hunters while you were there.
Yeah, which would be awesome. And
they just never got it working. And now they figured it out now. So they've got these little set pieces all over the Nightmare.
It really does make it feel more alive. Like it doesn't feel like it's made just for you. The way some areas of the game do, where it's like everything's just waiting for me to show up and kill it.
I was so confused the first time I played it because there's a big crucified wolf in the middle of Yharnam, and then you run up the bridge to the cleric beast, and there's wolves there, and the hunters and the wolves ignore each other completely.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel like the hunters were actually hunting beasts, but here it actually does.
Yeah, which is masterstroke. Like it's super cool
definitely.
And adds a lot to making this place feel a certain way. As you kind of go around and gather treasure on your way up these stairs through these things, you get to that set piece that you mentioned when you actually get to the church, which is the first there's a trap. There's another cartoonish flaming sphere trap, but you get up there and there are two hunters trying to get into the cathedral. And a nightmare executioner, which is this tentacle faced behemoth, kind of pops out and start fighting. These things this is one of my favorite designs in the game. Like I really like the way these things look.
It's the coloration that sticks out for me. It's the pale white against the blue and the red that really makes them feel really sickly and vital.
I
at the
tried
same
writing
time.
a description of one, and I sounded like I was the narrator of a Lovecraft story.
Yeah.
Because it's just like all this like amalgam of things that I understand on their own terms, but don't actually go together.
Yep.
It's like the Yahagul helm with the church giant gear on top of an executioner body, but their head is a black hole.
Yeah.
And inside that there is a squid.
It's funny because when you put it in those terms like this, okay, so this is an amalgamation of these other things. This feels like kind of a weird counterpart to the Winter Lanterns.
Yeah.
Right? Just the idea that the Winter Lanterns are maybe your hunter's mind putting together just out of these disparate parts something that approximates the the gestalt of this thing that you otherwise couldn't comprehend. So maybe there are some messengers up here, and there's the doll's clothing down here, and this is okay. Here you go. The brain just spits out the sketch, and that's what you're saying. I don't know that that's exactly what's happening here, but this feels like an echo of that.
The look of them, they have like they're wearing the church giant set. It's the executioner model, like in terms of the body and everything, but they're wearing the church giant set. And later on, we find a bunch of them holding this weapon called the church cannon. And when you get the church cannon, it tells you this was designed by the church specifically for use by, I've got the quote here, brawny men with deteriorated brains. So it seems like these things might have been like a precursor to the church giants, if that makes any sense. Because like there's one, there are two kind of places where we meet them. And in this one, they're guarding the cathedral. Like it doesn't want the hunters to go in there. That's why it fights them. Then later on, there's a bunch of them guarding this, like the end area of the DLC, which we're going to get to. But the church don't want people there either. So it seems like almost this one at the cathedral might be like protecting what's inside the cathedral from the hunters that are trying to get in.
Yeah.
Well, which makes sense given what's inside the cathedral.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
In that way, specifically these brawny men with deteriorated minds, they also feel a little bit like an echo of the Huntsman's minions. To a degree, these the brick trolls and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
And just physically silhouette wise.
There is something that the church are doing that is making people like swell into these huge creatures. So you have like there's the executioners and there's the brick trolls and then there's the giants. But the giants seem like a different kind of species almost.
They do. They feel like a giant. They feel like the church attendants, but with a gigantism. Or monsterism.
And they look exactly like the ones you find in the labyrinth.
Yeah.
And also the nightmare executioners, they have the same bell around their neck that the church giants have. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes it like what Kole is like saying, if it is similar to my Winter Lanterns take, or like that Winter Lanterns take, that it is you kind of putting together elements that you've seen before, like that makes a kind of sense to it.
Yeah.
Like that they would have the bell, like it's kind of a hand wave, but it also, I can see it.
And they have that bizarre axe thing. Because like the executioners, they have their axe. It's like it's a regular sort of big metal axe, and if they grab you, they will cut your head off with it. Whereas these ones, the axe is like this weird hunk of like rock that its attacks actually do this weird like arcane effect, and you can hear a bell ringing as they swing it. And it's got like runes on it if you get up close and look at it. And they're not like there are runes on the Kirk hammer, and there's runes on the sort of the sides of the staircase as you go up the cathedral. And those look like they're very sort of Norse looking runes. They're very ordered and they're very angular. But the runes on this axe are just all over the place, like this weird sort of looping curved design. It looks kind of Celtic. So it's like they're not the same runes. They don't belong together. So this axe is just bizarre.
Yeah, we don't know what it is. They also do like a magic area effect that doesn't map to any other kind of magic attack we've seen
The closest thing I can think of is it looks like what Velstadt does when he powers up, and he's like waving his mace around. And you hear this like chiming sound, and there's this weird shockwave. I
was gonna say it makes sense with the bell.
Yeah, exactly.
They're on loan from the Dark Souls 2 collection.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where like I think that this might be like a cultural thing that we don't get.
Yeah,
like when I start seeing like the same thing repeat over and over in Japanese video games, sort of start assuming this is a reference to something that I don't have a referent for.
Mm-hmm. Like similar to the centipede thing.
Yeah.
With the
yeah. And later on, like there's a bunch of stuff with Ludwig, but we'll talk about that, I guess, when we get there.
And just the kind of the omnipresence of bells across the series, that must have something to do. I mean, I don't know. Bells have spiritual significance in a lot of religions, but
Redgrave, the Pelbon Hunt guy, he actually, I think it was like a week ago, uploaded an hour-long video that's just him discussing bells. It's like
so much of what we do just to an outsider would come across as mania.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing about the Soulsborne game.
We link that in the show notes. That's really useful.
They give you a sense of purpose if you choose to see it. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. That is possibly the the best pro tip about watching a video about bells I've seen.
If you watch one video about bells this year,
oh man,
maybe this one.
Miracle on 34th Street, you're hard out.
If you like bells, you will like this video. After you fight these guys, do we just like mechanically, these things are not the hardest thing to fight in the world. Like you just kind of want to stick behind them. They have some kind of wrinkles, but later when they recontextualize it, where you fight the one with the other one covering them with the church cannon, it's much more difficult. This one, the hunters can soften him up, so he's not that big of a fight. When we get in to see what he's guarding, and you head up the cathedral, and it has the same kind of peanut-headed amygdala statues with the spears that we've seen before, but you're kind of greeted by this really kind of breathtaking sight when you get there, which is this beast that is on fire laying under the altar. Yeah. And you guys all expected him to come up and attack you, right?
I love the way they subvert that expectation. I expected, because I fought Vicar Amelia to get here, I thought this was going to be the kickoff.
Yeah. Yeah. But it just stays there and breathes and doesn't attack you.
He's napping. He's a sleepy boy.
Yeah, he's had a rough day.
And when he eventually wakes up, he looks like he's got a hangover.
Yeah, the kind of hangover that comes from being immolated.
Feeling around like, oh my god, what happened?
Yeah. Drink too many atomic fireballs, like
Egg McMuffin.
Yeah. But you're coming here to grab the eye pendant from him.
Yes.
I
like this eye pendant because out of context, this is one of my favorite strings of text in the game. Mm-hmm. Talking about two cathedrals, one which lies beyond the River of Blood, and another which contains the private research hall of the church. Only chosen members of the healing church and their lamentable patients can enter the research hall using this eye. And it says it grants eyes to the surgical altar. Which just take those words out of context.
Definitely.
Yeah, it sounds anything that mentions a river of blood.
Yeah,
and I like how,
or the surgical altar.
Yeah, the surgical altar. The river of blood is not like a Chekhov's river of blood. Like we immediately get to see the river of blood fire. More or less, which is great. I was surprised by how quickly and how much blood we found. How thoroughly it was a river of blood.
It wasn't just a stream or a crick of blood. Go ahead.
The other thing about the eye pendant giving you grant eyes to the skull on the altar, that like when the game first came out and people were sort of piecing together what happened, there was this belief that like the division between the Healing Church and Bergenworth was that the Bergenworth was specifically looking for eyes on the inside, whereas the Healing Church were trying to do stuff with blood. But this shows that the Healing Church were actually attempting to grant eyes on the inside, like from the beginning. They just differed in their methodology.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a blood insight divide. It was actually they just approached the same thing differently.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of things that it wasn't people who thought that, and we said that as well. Like it's not an insane thing to think because there's so much text in the main game that suggests that. But there's so many like kind of like secret. Like the Bergenworth room, in Erdn, there's so much little crossover thing and when you pair that with kind of the sin that we find out about and kind of getting Bergenworth's hands dirty, that you can come away from this thinking like there's not, we're not so different, you and I, like it's, they're all bastards. Like there's no, nobody's getting away clean. There's not as much difference as you maybe thought.
Yeah.
In many ways, and not just this eyes versus blood kind of dichotomy.
Yeah.
Here.
They're all looking for this end goal, which is eyes on the inside, which is just a shorthand, their best assumption or their best kind of approximation of what this kind of cosmic insight could possibly be, what it manifests as.
Yeah.
No, it's so cool that you don't fight here and you have to walk out thinking this thing's gonna jump up after you.
Yeah, exactly.
The entire time. It's like the approach is one thing, and then when you grab it, it's like, you're not done yet. Like, you're not relieved of the tension because at any point you could switch into a cutscene as you're running out.
Yeah. I thought I did something wrong. Like, I went back and I poked it a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm glad you don't fight this here because this was the first. I think this was the boss I had the hardest time with in the DLC.
Yeah.
And I would be really bummed out if I end up having to fight him first. But we will be back. So you head out and you head to the right, where there are a couple of other, big set piece things like and new twists. One, there are turrets now in Bloodborne.
Yeah, these are just little objects that are breakable like vases, except they are placed specifically on this bridge. I can't think of too many places they show up elsewhere.
There's a couple in that like plaza area.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I first saw them, and I had no idea what they were, I thought they were cameras. And there's this
they look like it. And,
there's this
and
like set up to a horrible slapstick comedy death bit with I recorded it right, like pointing
like
the
they're filming
monocular
Yarnum
right at the
Jackass,
barrel, going, "I wonder what this is. It looks like a camera. How do I turn it on?"
Yeah. The ones in the little plaza are up against a fence, and they look to me like they were bulwarking it, like they were stopping.
Yeah.
They were a defense thing because I never had a hunter go over there and shoot me with it. I don't know if they can over in the plaza.
I think the one that's in the plaza, it's like connected to a pressure plate near that hunter that he has to stand on.
Gotcha.
Something like that doesn't always come off because he has his own AI and he'll run off fighting beasts.
Yeah, I've never been shot over there.
I
have been shot here because these turrets cover each other.
Yeah, this is like, it's like Toho.
Yep, yeah. It is a very stationary bullet hell.
Yep. And you could be forgiven for getting shot here because you are so distracted by the gigantic dead amygdala that's going to come to life as you approach it as well.
Yes, that is like calcified like a piece of coral under the sea. Like this mineral corruption has taken over this desiccated corpse and subsumed it and made a grim statue of it.
Yeah. And that makes you wonder, like, are the amygdala statues in Yahogul actually statues?
Did they just hastily pose them before they ossified?
Or is this like, did they just find a dead amygdala and start worshipping it? Because, like, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, given what pops up later, they'll worship anything.
Taxidermy seems within the theming of this.
And
game.
they turn people to stone in Yahogul, so it's not beyond, beyond possibility.
Yeah. But beyond this bridge, there's another familiar sight. We're kind of dipping in and out of the Cathedral Ward and Central Yharnam here, but there is the Nightmare Dwelling, right? You'll remember this as the building that kind of taught you a little bit what the pungent blood cocktails do by setting up the trap and making you fall for it as the wheelchair guy shot you. And outside of this, they introduce you to a similar trap. These enemies which use delayed Molotov cocktails, which to me feel like a PvP item.
Yeah, like saying if you build for them,
useless.
you can. They're really weird. Like they're like they've established that we should have the technology for this, and we're about to see a Gatling gun. So like we have this technology, but it's a really, really strange item to have. Sticky bombs.
Yeah, because there's like really nothing that they do that you can't do with a regular Molotov.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but faster.
Yeah, you don't need to set traps for enemies.
Right.
In this game, it's not really a playstyle that's supported. But I wonder if you could really crank up. If you have a build that emphasizes them, if they scale with Arcane the same way Molotovs do, if they are useful in PvP.
Yeah.
Like you back away to heal and you throw one of these down to create some space or what have you.
Like the rope Molotov, the rope delayed Molotov.
Yeah.
Which is like if you're being chased by something that can't move.
Yeah. Exactly.
It has no function beyond that.
Yeah,
Um,
but this this is another set piece where you're dealing with enemies who are using this specifically as they for me they ended up chasing me back up the staircase as this other hunter with an exploding hammer came after me, which we're going to get soon enough.
yeah. You can also look down on the River of Blood from here and do some sniping if you have Molotovs, or if you have if you're built for Blood Tinge or what have you, and try to clear this out a little bit. But I like being able to see the River of Blood because I like the River of Blood.
You pay a little bit more for the River of Blood view, but it's worth it. Quality of life.
The River
kind
of Blood view apartments.
Yep.
Yeah. So inside the dwelling, the same place where there was the Gatling gun wheelchair guy, there is a wheelchair corpse that has one of these Molotovs on it as a trap, which is a nice little touch.
Yep.
And,
and I died to it the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can get the boom hammer here.
I love that name too. That is such a crude name.
Boom
hammer. It's like a high school football star.
It's Boomhauer's son if they reboot King of the Hill. But no, this is I wish that more of the powder keg stuff was kind of named like this, that took delight in the mayhem that it caused, right? But this feels like a fire-based counterpart to the Tonitrus, in that it's another weapon that it doesn't have a trick form. You just charge it up for this explosive attack.
It's a little different in that you do it adds an area effect to your attacks, and it only happens once. So it reminds me more of the special weapons that you'd get in previous Souls games that have like one special R2 attack. That was kind of an AoE of some type. It reminds me more of that. It's the only fire elemental weapon out of the box, which is useful. And I like big hammers, so I used it for a little bit, but then I got the whirly gig and realized, hey, I like strength weapons. This is my jam.
That was one of the frustrating things about this DLC. Actually, there was so much fun. There were so many fun toys that I ended up sinking some upgrade materials into all of it. Trying to play with it, because you can't really do a direct comparison between a +10 whatever and a +0 anything else. So
you can't. They're not useful right out of the box.
Right. The battery is not included.
Yes.
There's a door that leads up to an enemy that baffled me until I understood some of the stuff you would get later in the DLC. Up by Gilbert's house, there is what appears to be a human-sized, very nimble werewolf beast kind of guy who attacks you with the beast claws, but has a very different moveset than you're used to.
Yeah.
Which I like that this is previewed here, and he's in the same spot where I don't know how much significance there is to this, but he's in the exact same spot where Beast Gilbert, like when Beast Gilbert busts out of his window.
Yeah, people was like suggesting that is Gilbert, but it isn't.
Timeline doesn't work.
Well, no, it's more that when you kill him, he drops the
auto
fire
or the
hammer badge, is it for the auto workshop?
Yeah, he drops
it's like this is a guy who's before like the powder keg's time,
right?
And he's before and whereas Gilbert is apparently just shown up in Yharnam like not that long ago.
Yeah, this guy just showed up as like on the least disclosure. Most of my jokes this week are real estate based. I don't know why that is, so I'll just back off of that. Yep, I picked a theme. Go back and listen to this entire season. I picked a theme. No, but this guy, if he was crashing there, he was just there before Gilbert was.
Yeah. It's like how statistically there's been a murder or a murderer in any house that you live in. Probably
there's
if you like go in an old house that somebody's probably died there.
Yeah, there's bound to be a ghost in the back of your closet.
Yeah, it's probably true. So the auto workshop. So there's this precursor to the powder kegs, as we mentioned, and having this firing hammer badge allows you to get the piercing rifle, which is a gun for range attacks rather than counters. So they're introducing between that and the bow, they're introducing ranged play.
Yeah, finally.
In a game where character starts with a gun.
I like the auto workshop because the powder kegs are intriguing to me, but also because they feel like the like an analog to the College of Benheim a little bit. The sound sorcerers and stuff like that, like a little weird little detailed thing that fires your imagination without getting tons of direct text,
right?
And doesn't have very many implications, if any.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some stuff with, with old Yarnum and everything and how they were, but they're not major movers and shakers,
Right.
in the main story. They're like a faction that was involved, but isn't a prime mover, it feels like.
The one kind of like lore bit you get from that, from my perspective anyway, is that it specifically says that the piercing rifles, they designed it to hunt in alleys and to hunt in narrow streets.
Yeah.
Which suggests that, like, prior to that, there weren't beasts, like, skulking around the alleys, maybe, that they were, like, I don't know, that the
They were a
beast, there
field,
was
or they
less
were,
like an urban beast issue at the time.
they were in the countryside or what have you, like parts that we don't see. And then
I don't know if we want to get to it now, but, like, the constable set description.
They're filthy, decadent foreigners.
No, but it says that the constables who, it's essentially outright said were led by Volta. They chased a beast all the way to Yharnam. They're foreigners. So if that's basically saying, okay, there were beasts like way outside Yharnam. Yharnam is not like the epicenter of this scourge. We know they existed in Canehurst, and now we find out that they existed in wherever Volta is from.
Yeah.
So it's like that sort of, it gives you a really different impression, because if you just play the game like the base one, you get the impression that the beast thing, it's pretty much just confined to Yharnam, and it may have happened in the past in Canehurst. But here you get this thing where, no, there are beasts all over the shop, like, and it's all like other cities, maybe other countries that are being like chased around. Yeah, and Yharnam just has it worse than other places.
Well, the DLC kind of reveals that old ones and their influence is kind of like fire departments. Every town's got one, even if they're just volunteers.
Yeah.
This is much more common than we think.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about how those separate beast plagues articulated, or what the causes were, or what the details of that. But again, that's those suggestions, again, reminding me of Vinheim, like this idea of just things outside of the game world that aren't directly touched upon.
You know what I'm thinking? Sequel hook.
Oh, sure.
You heard it here first,
Constable
folks.
Adventures.
Yeah.
Bloodborne 2, Revenge of the Constable.
Bloodborne 2, Constabulary.
Yeah, we're gonna die. So let's head into this river of blood. When are they gonna get to the fireworks factory?
Let's put on these waders and let's go down there with the blood lickers.
So I'll give you two clues as to what the river of blood is. First clue, river. Second clue, blood.
Second clue, bring like a Tide stick, something for some spot stains.
Yeah, it is. It's lots of blood. But it is a river of blood that's outside of this house, with these strangely passive blood lickers.
Yeah. Well, they don't have to come after you. They don't have to come after a source of blood that fights. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have all they could ever want.
It's all you can eat night at the Sizzler. Like these guys are at the old country buffet, and you're trying to deliver them a pizza.
Yeah, they're king shit of Blood Mountain. Like, yeah, no, they're they're down here, and they'll really like most of them. They seem programmed to just kind of passively fire some blood at you because they have a surplus. I think.
Yeah.
And do the ones in Canehurst and the Chalices ever fire that blood? Because I've never seen them do it.
I think
it seems just be do they?
I seem to recall that they do.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're probably just less likely to do it because probably has to do with how far away you are, and these guys have really short leashes.
Yeah.
Whereas the leashes on the ones in Canehurst are none. Like they'll just chase you the entire up until the building, and they won't, or up to the foyer. So these gangs, you can just run past these guys. However, you want to clear them out because you're going to get into a really tough encounter, and you don't want to get hit from behind with blood and get sunlocked as you go into the blood cave.
Yeah, so you can go downstream, and there is there is a nightmare cave that is guarded by a Gatling gun hunter, which can stunlock you, forever until you die. And turns out there's probably some nasty stuff, not as nasty, but complements the nastiness right behind him.
It's like a miniature version of Old Yharnam in a cave. Because you start out with the guy Gatling gunning you, and then you run through and there's little beast patients, and then at the end there's a blood-starved beast.
Yeah. Oh, shit. I didn't realize
the
that.
libretto for Old Yharnam,
Yeah.
It's the digest version,
this Gatling gun hunter took me a lot of tries. I had a hard time with this guy because he's very cautious. He knows he has the upper hand and will just back away and shoot at you and that just whittled me down a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has nothing to gain by exposing himself.
Yeah, it's a very defensible
Once you
position.
figure out his AI, though, he's very easy to exploit.
How
Because
do
he
you,
will
yeah.
lose you if you like run around the rock in the middle of the room, and then he just goes back to being passive again.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then when he's passive, you can just sneak up, charge out to Visceral, lose him again, and just do that like half a dozen times, and you can kill him like right after you've done Amelia, and grab the Gatling gun.
Yeah.
I didn't go into the cave. Like I kept him near the mouth of the cave because I was too scared of what was going to be in the cave.
Yeah.
The first time, so I couldn't go around a rock or anything like that. I would just back out, but when you back out, he just has kind of a straight shot at you and get a couple pot shots. So I didn't go in there. After you beat him,
I found him a lot easier to backstab than other hunter fights, actually, because just because he remained nonviolent up until I was like right on top of him, and then it was too late.
Yeah.
The after you kill him, you get the Gatling gun, which is if you build for it, if you have good blood tinge, will stun lock enemies to death. Yeah.
We were talking about this like before the recording, but the only thing that stops you being able to stun lock the bloody crow to death with the Gatling gun is that his health won't quite run out. Like you just lock on and hold L2 and he dies. And like the keeper of the old lords, like you can just walk into that room and hold L2 and just close your eyes for 10 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And then they're dead.
Yeah.
It's a point and click operation, huh?
Yeah,
It
actually,
is.
it seems like the AI is designed to like dodge the first projectile that you aim at it and not worry about others.
But none of the
because it's used to
subsequent,
you firing like single things like Molotovs, but that's just a spray that it doesn't adjust for.
Right. Huh.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But if you deal with this guy, you can go deeper into the cave, and as we mentioned, there's there's a blood-starved beast back there, which I totally didn't recognize out of the context of his boss arena. Like I just thought this was a new and crazy thing that flopped around a lot before I went and did some research and saw like, oh yeah, that's totally a blood-starved beast.
Yeah, I definitely recognize him as a blood-starved beast, but I didn't engage him the first time through the DLC because I had, my first run through with the Bloodstarved Beast I had a hard time with, and I was expecting, the entire gamut of Bloodstarved Beastness. But this one doesn't do the poison stuff. He doesn't do any of that. He's kind of like a pupper version that just like doesn't have blood made out of poison.
He's a blood peckish beast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a blood I could eat beast. And he's not really like, and if you go further back in, you get this the amygdalin arm. Which is what it sounds like. Which is really cool. Like it's a big strength, big fuck off club weapon that when it's in a transform state has like a tentacle at the end that does multi hits. So it's actually like I used it for a little while and it's pretty good. Like I did decent damage with it and got lots of hits without using tons of stamina.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a unique moveset, and I relish the idea of going and killing Amygdala with one of his own arms one day.
Yeah, or peeling an arm off of one and being like, "This is mine now." Like, if you want this back, you're gonna have to take it from me. And then leaving.
And it's on a hunter corpse, which is like, this isn't like an improvised thing that we've come up with. Like there was a guy in this cave
who was
trying
doing
to
that.
kill the blood-starved beast with a 7 amygdala arm.
I love the description says that madmen wield them like clubs.
Yeah.
Which is like
I guess that does say something about the proliferation of amygdalas, right? Like in this time period or in this era, because the idea is that in the Hunter's Nightmare they have this whole thing about how hunters used to be 10 a penny, and you get the sense that they used to be much more common. So if this is a weapon that people use, what does that say about how many amygdalas there are around that we can actually?
Doesn't it specify that it's from like a young amygdala that's not fully grown? That's why we're able to wield it.
I think something that in fact, let me look at
let's see here. Strictly speaking, the arm of a small amygdala grade 1.
Yeah.
So small doesn't imply young, but but
at least not the ones that we're used to.
Yeah, it's still a trophy. I mean, like the ones that we're used to, they have arms that would stretch halfway across a football field.
Yeah. And they use their own arms as clubs as well. They rip them off.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
10 a penny.
So maybe like a hunter saw an amygdala do that and thought,
see, yeah, it's
we
an
have to
inspiration.
find a place to cut off these things' arms so we can mass produce these bad boys.
Gotta rush these to market.
If you head upstream, There are some more bloodsuckers or bloodlickers, and you get to this bridge you can walk up to with some hunters, and that leads us to a shortcut, which is kind of merciful. And the first NPC we're going to run into here.
Yes, this is Simon the Harrowed.
Yeah. And Simon's interesting. We're gonna learn more about his story as the DLC goes. But he is, and we don't even know his name at this point, right? Like we know he's Simon because of later. Until then, he's just kind of a mysterious tatterdemalion, just kind of hanging out. And he knows you don't belong here, but he says something like, he kind of taunts you a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's, as we later kind of find out, like he wants you, I think he wants you to complete this quest. Like he wants you to uncover the secret.
Yeah.
It seems kind of like Solaire, where he's going on the same quest as you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's trying to, he's kind of goading you along because he wants other people to help, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
like
he
says at the start, he says, we're more alike than you think. I think meaning everyone else in the nightmare is completely blood drunk.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get the sense that you're the the Bernstein to his Woodward a little bit.
Really, because he's Simon the Harrowed in the credits, but in the Future Press guide, he's Simon the Seeker of Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like he's very specifically come here to find this. Although weirdly, he seems to already know what the secret is.
Well, that's when I said he was like he wanted you to do it, and he was kind of taunting you a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he talks about the secret the way you talk to a little kid when you want the little kid to ask about it, or something like that. Like it's like reverse psychology almost.
Yeah. He's acting as a guide because he knows that if he goes you in the right direction, you will possibly multiply his force as you go along.
He does like, again, one of those things that becomes apparent later on. When we find him at the very, very end of his quest line, he does beg you to continue like in his stead.
Yeah.
To bring an end to the nightmare.
And so he's kind of one of two NPCs that play a major role, the other one trying to be an impediment. And we will run into him for the first time next episode. But for now, the important thing is that he says something like, you're curious about nightmares, aren't you? Or you, and if you say yes, you can continue his quest line.
Right.
Here.
Yeah. And he says, it's as if the spirit of Bergenworth lives on within you. And then talks about, kind of gives you the Yarnum version of Curiosity Killed the Cat.
Yeah. Yep.
And he's he's before our time as well. If you look at the Bowblade description, it says that's fashioned by the church workshop. But in the current kind of state of Yarnum, I think Gurman explicitly says the Church have forgotten the hunters. So that places Simon after the time of the old hunters, but before our time.
Right.
But it's not quite clear when.
Yeah.
I'm looking
this
forward
isn't a hunter who's contemporaneous with us, on the same hunt as us.
Right.
It's someone who predates us by we don't know, maybe a couple of years or something.
I love the idea. Maybe. So he probably postdates Ludwig a little bit, actually.
Yeah.
Or it's implied that he knows Ludwig.
Well, Ludwig's the first church hunter.
Yeah.
And he's a church hunter. So he would, by definition, have to be post Ludwig. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to killing him for his bow. Next time
which you can do right now, if you want to. But otherwise, this opens up a very worthwhile shortcut. Yeah. So after you check in with Simon and save at your lamp, you can go further upstream here. And one of the best details about this that I didn't notice until right now, although you could probably notice it earlier, is that these bodies that you're seeing kind of speckled within this river are subtly moving. They're reaching up. They are kind of striving to grasp the light.
Yeah. I talked about this in my first video on the DLC, but the whole River of Blood thing, it's like a sort of motif you get in the Buddhist underworld. The idea of a river of blood with corpses drowning in it. Yeah. So this area, it's kind of like if you play Doom, that's made by guys who come from they're out of a Judeo-Christian culture, so their version of hell is okay, we've got a lake of fire, we've got guys with goat legs, we've got pentagrams everywhere. This is it's sort of similar, it's like a mashup of Asian underworld tropes. So like the river of there's a Buddhism. There's so many different Buddhist sects, and they've all sects, not sects, and they've all got different like variations on what like kind of underworld is, and then the how many underworlds there are, and there's some where it's like there's 134, and some it's 18, and some it's 72,000. I think one of them.
Yeah.
But one of the ones you see recurring is it's a river or a pool of blood that sinners are made to drown in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also, I think, where the crows come from, because in some of those descriptions you're in a pool of blood and you're drowning, and as you reach up, there are crows that are pecking at you when you put your hand above the river. So that seems to be the origin of the crows here.
Yeah. Is this for people who fall outside, who fall below the cycle of reincarnation?
Well, there's different, like, it's a motif that you see across different kinds of hell. And, like, there's a very specifically gendered one that is about, it's a river of blood that women are, like, all required to be drowned in, because the act of childbirth and the act of menstruation spills blood on the ground, and that pollutes it. So it's like that concept of, like sort of women carry the sin around. So like women are innately polluting things through the act of childbirth and through menstruation.
Yeah. Weird how that's universal.
Yeah, so they have to be thrown in the river to like atone for that. But then there are non-gendered ones where it's just like it's not a nice place to be.
Yeah. It's it makes sense if that does kind of follow the model that they would choose this underworld for people who couldn't be kind of recycled, because that is the role that this serves in the hunter's cosmos, right? Like if you are in the dream, then you will, or if you are a hunter who dreams, you will constantly be brought back to continue the hunt, right? Whereas this is kind of the fail state, right? This is what happens when you glitch through the world.
The bloodlickers might be.
Oh, yeah?
Because there's a creature called the Hungry Ghost, which, if you know about like Chinese Buddhism stuff, you might have heard of.
The Yao Guai, right?
Yeah, that's the thing that you're reincarnated as if the cycle kind of messes up. And they look, in terms of their design, very, very, very much like bloodlickers do. The idea is the Hungry Ghost is like you're cursed with eternal hunger, but you have to eat things that are like taboo substances, so you have to eat blood and you have to eat excrement and things like that, and they're like an emaciated corpse with this enormous distended stomach and a huge tongue,
a cosmic case of pica.
Yeah, that's the impression I get from the bloodlickers, that's where they've come from. Design wise, if not necessarily story wise, that these things are like the idea of the sort of the emaciated yet bloated thing that's having to drink this corrupted blood.
It's this thing that craves something that gives them no sustenance.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that are on the ground here, the blood corpses, not only do they writhe, and sometimes they'll writhe, especially a little later, in very obvious ways, and kind of almost get to sitting up. If you attack the ground here, it also makes the blood noise. Like your weapon will go through it rather than clang off of it and make the attack noise.
Ugh.
Here. So you're definitely walking on flesh.
Yeah. And it's funny because we know the source of these bodies. We know what this is, what mill this is the grist of, right?
Yeah. It's like the whole DLC in Microcosm, where you see this thing, you don't quite understand it. And then at the end, we see the source of it. Yeah.
And the kind of the hint as the one of the hints of the source of that is going to come up.
Yeah.
Pretty soon. As you move through and you get the bodies just reaching for you and stuff, you get past this first little area and you get to this valley, another blood valley, where there are these nightmare executioners, one with the church cannon, which we talked about a little bit. And there's a little chapel to the right.
Yeah.
But you really want to head downward and continue down to the corpse ravine and Nightmare Church.
There's a wonderful encounter here where you're walking along and you see a shadow, a silhouette of a hunter, very distinct. You've seen them all throughout here, cast along the opposite side of this wall across these sewer rafters. Right. Again, this is the kind of akin to the sewer section of Central Yardom. And as you kind of approach this and grab an item that's right there, oh shit, you see the shadow move. This is a guy who's been waiting for you to jump down. That is a wonderful little horror game scare.
Yeah,
little ambush.
Yeah.
most importantly here, there's two things: the mechanical importance thing, and then the cool lore thing. As you're going down this little ravine, a pale body in a shell drops down in front of you, and dies. In a way that's like, so if you're like looking away for a second, you can miss this. Like it's
I
so
actually
quick.
missed it the first time, and I had no idea where it had come from.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah, but this falls out of the sky.
But it makes a sound, and it definitely
Yes.
happened. Like,
Yes.
I
Yeah,
thought it had
exactly.
tunneled up from underground and was massively confused until later on.
That's a terrifying idea too. Like,
worms after the rain. Yeah.
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 Yeah, so we're gonna find out where this guy came from, or where this lady came from pretty soon. There's some weird kind of glitch trickery you can do. You can actually bring it back to life using the Medeiros' whistle item, which I think is a glitch. I don't think that's necessarily lore.
It looks like the
significant.
hitbox is like underground, and you can trigger it with that attack.
That's what I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as of now, it is non-active. You can't kill it. You can't do anything to it.
I so wish that it had a key on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to be like the beginning of Dark Souls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Drop it like snail souls, like this different kind. The other thing you can get is at the mouth of this ravine, you can get the Whirligig, which is kind of like the melee equivalent of the Gatling gun as far as stun locking things. Like you can't stun lock things to death, but if you have a good build, like you can do serious business with this thing.
Yeah, and they've already had to patch it because it was so overpowered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my
pretty
favorite
amazing.
thing about the Whirligig saw is that when we first saw it in the trailer, everyone was like, LOL, it's a pizza cutter. And then we found out that Volta actually did use this to hack up a beast and eat it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's actually a culinary implement.
Yeah, no, this is what he used to turn them into mincemeat.
Yeah.
Pizza Beast. The this thing owns. It has that the Odo Workshop kind of thing of naming things in a goofy way.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I first saw that it was called the Whirligig, I was just like, never in my wildest dreams did I think that would be this good, like this dumb and awesome of a name for something. Like it just sounds like a 1920s inventor describing a helicopter.
Yep.
know?
Specifically, that's what it's like. What it evokes to me is this is this science beyond its time kind of thing.
Yeah. Like by taking a Whirligig to Prussia, you can, catch the Turkish consulate before, the Ottomans. Like it's a very like of a place or of a time.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
but this is great in its one-handed form. It's a club that it's fine enough. But
It's pretty good actually. Like it's
yeah.
pretty fast and everything. It's a quick attack. So,
but when you two-hand it, it looks like a gigantic pizza cutter. But it's a saw blade and it's automated, and you do these big attacks and they spin, and you can hold it and it stun locks because it spins. It spins into whatever its blades find purchase into, or whatever its teeth find purchase into.
Recontextualizing spin to win, which is just a Dark Souls meme that like works in every Dark Souls or Bloodborne game. There's something where it's like
I have
spin to
seen
win.
someone kill Rom in like, I think it was 8 seconds.
God.
Yeah.
Just using that spin, just aiming at Rom and going,
It's the trade-off you have to make to want to deal with that noise the entire time you're playing.
Yeah.
Having it in that form. Like when I put it away, that's why. It's like I can't listen to it anymore. It's great though. It's really, really good. If I find my second, this is where my second Blood Rock is going. If I play any more Bloodborne, because I like this weapon
We
quite a
can
bit.
just buy it now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they patched that in since the last time since I played the DLC. So thank goodness. Like they're doing a lot of like those are good fixes. Like
yeah.
you're going to introduce like that was one of the things about doing the DLC as late as I did was I didn't have the resources to spend to make this stuff viable, and I'd gone through all of the main game more or less.
Yeah.
So
Because you were kind of limited to like picking 1 or 2 weapons and sticking with them because it was such a pain to farm for stuff.
yeah. And part of that it goes in line with I was talking to Vivian about this, and I think that this was her point, is that it's in line with the idea that you're supposed to form a relationship with one weapon and get to know it really well, since the movesets are so disparate.
Yeah.
Which I like, but also I want to play with. Like I don't know that I'm going to like a moveset until I played with the toy.
Yeah, and that's
So I
like,
want
to
to be able
me
to play with.
why I really liked the gem system. I mean, there was a lot of grinding involved, but it meant that you got a good gem set. You could just shove that in whatever weapon you wanted.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the previous Souls games where like you upgrade something down plus 10 lightning, and then it's like, I wonder if it would work if it was fire. And then you got to go get another one, upgrade that to plus 10 fire, and then that's,
It's the final. It's the materia system versus the Final Fantasy
Yeah,
VI
exactly.
system.
It's the materia system.
I never started appreciating the gem system until we did the Chalice Dungeon stuff.
Yeah.
And recognizing how that made weapon traits portable was it definitely clicked for me at that point.
Like,
So the Chalice Dungeons did have a positive thing.
it's like I dig that as an idea, but it's so unnecessary in PvE.
Yep.
Like it still ends up being like if you just go with gems out of the box, you're still fine. It's also like it made me really wish that there was a respec. Like I really like the I can't remember the name of the item right now in Dark Souls 2 that allowed you to do that because like why not? Like just let me like I haven't done a dex build, but I want to fuck around with a bow. Why do I have to play the entire game again?
Yeah.
It's a little bit frustrating. Like they really doubled down to that. You should just have a relationship with your weapon, but that's hard when weapons are introduced so late in the game.
Yeah. And that's one of the funny things. Like this is, prior to the release of this DLC, there was kind of some rumblings about, hey, this will make arcane builds viable, but it still feels like relatively late game content aside from those suicide run acquisitions.
That's what I was basically doing suicide run stuff.
Right.
Getting
like
to
my current character is a 99 arcane build. I was like desperate to grab the Black Sky Eye.
Yeah.
Which is an arcane spell you get later on. So like fighting
getting that
at
at a low level
like 30 is not fun.
Right.
No, that would be really, really difficult.
You have to like just rely on Volta getting lucky.
Oh wow. Yeah. But what I was playing through at this time, before I remembered, oh yes, I can buy as many blood rocks as I want as long as I have the insight. I was playing it on New Game Plus, gritting my teeth and kind of bearing it. This isn't as hard on New Game Plus as I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if this is, if there's an angle to this, which is like, you can get stuff here and then this can recontextualize either later runs or, you can experience this the first time on New Game Plus.
See, I haven't done it on New Game Plus yet. But like I felt like when I got there, I compared the difficulty of the areas. It feels like it's depth 3, depth 4, depth 5 chalices when you play it on New Game. And I felt like if this scales, it's going to be impossible.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's not scaling as much.
No.
Yeah.
I can't speak to the actual numbers.
It
but
shouldn't have scaled, maybe. It should have been like a chalice thing. I don't know.
That's interesting. That's an interesting idea. I don't know exactly how it would have made sense. Like I like it's challenging. I like the way in which it's challenging compared to some parts of the game. Like I feel like this is the best content in the game in many ways. And
yeah, definitely.
It's the most fun I had, as far as being challenged by the bosses, specifically the two dual ones, which I think are the best boss fights in the game. But it does make that the decision to load so much new equipment into the game kind of weird.
It's complicated.
Yeah,
it's more complicated than you would want it to be.
Yeah. Because I want to do a bow run. It's just that do I want to put up with doing it? And luckily you can get that pretty early.
Yeah,
but
just come here and kill salmon.
You want to do if you want to do like a broccoli head run, or you want to do a beast mode run, like that's a much higher bar to clear. To do most of the game as a werewolf.
Yeah.
So we're head up to the second kind of cathedral here, where at the source of the river, and there is a gate here with Bloody Carl like pounding against it.
I love this guy. Like the second I saw this, I was on board for the DLC, but the second I saw this, I knew that tonally this was right up my alley. This guy pounding against the bars, even though he's planted firmly in this river of blood, just because he's trapped up against it.
Yeah.
Not that I'm some kind of fucking sadist who revels in the suffering of others. I just love the creepy Jacob's Ladder side of that imagery.
It's really it's goofy in a way that I think works, and it's right next. And this is, I feel like, going to be controversial even on the podcast. Like in a way that I think that the next big goofy horror thing that happens, I think doesn't work. Like I don't love it. This I think works really well. Like I like this kind of pathetic little blood golem doing this and doing kind of pathetically scraping against the bars. But when we head into this church, and there's another eye collector here, which I don't really know why.
I don't understand it either.
Why he's here?
If you look at the little pounding blood guy, his spine has like little spikes running down it. So it looks like he was maybe like kind of transforming into a beast patient, and they sort of put him down before it finished.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of the impression I get from a lot of the bodies here, that they're like, these are the people that were about to transform, so they're just sort of thrown to Ludwig, maybe?
Oh.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely could be.
I don't know, though.
And it's their determination that is keeping them. Yeah.
And as you head up into the church, as we mentioned, as you head towards the boss here,
in the corpse pile.
In the corpse church of corpse piles, to Ludwig the Accursed. Here.
Yeah.
Which, like, as I said, like, this doesn't, they revealed this guy in the trailer, and I was just like, I was a little bummed out, and I was like, oh, it's like another just like big beast fight. And I think the fight is better than I expected it to be, but his human horse face doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be, I'm not trying to be down. I know a lot of people who love it. I think it's on the side of goofy that doesn't seem cool to me anymore. His mouth with eyeballs for teeth, on board.
Yeah.
Love it. The sword, all the business of the sword, love it.
Yeah.
But his weird, like,
Ludwig's
why the long face?
Ludwig's design, it's another one of those like Asian hell kind of mashup things, I think, because one of the common sort of demon motifs you see in depictions of Buddhist hell is that there's two demons called Ox Head and Horseface. And they're like the guardians of hell, and they're sometimes depicted like torturing sinners there. So it seems like Ludwig is inspired by Horseface. In the sense of being like a horse monster that tortures you in the afterlife.
I don't know. I like, just horses are funny to me. Its goofiness worked for me, specifically because of the they set him up as this awful thing, which is kind of running rampant over these pathetic corpse creatures, which are in fact not corpses but still alive. This this terrible thing. Is begging you for mercy, saying that there's this unsightly beast who is preying on them. Protect them. It is, Ludwig the Accursed, and then down he comes. So he's already set up as kind of this devourer of bodies, almost.
But the thing is, he's not actually devouring them. He's just he's like trampling them like a horse does. He just sort of bucks around, and like his human side is completely sort of subsumed to the beast side.
Yeah.
He doesn't become he doesn't snap back into being Ludwig's consciousness until halfway through the fight.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it's just like here's a pile of corpses and he's trampling them, and it's almost like the blood isn't even really blood. It's like he's just trampled the bodies until they're a paste and it's just leaked out.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, oh god. And there's tomb mold everywhere there as well. It's growing under the bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, how to describe the rest of this guy? So there's a giant mouth with eyeballs for teeth. That's kind of growing out of his shoulder or kind of his side there. And then his face, which is a horse. It's you mentioned this in your video, Richard, but it does kind of recall the horse demon from Berserk a little bit as well.
Well, I think the horse demon from Berserk is itself inspired by the
horse face of hell.
Like, so not like I was talking about before. Once you sort of tune yourself into, horses torturing you in the afterlife is a thing in Asian hell, you start noticing that horse-faced humans torturing you shows up constantly in like video games, like they're in Legend of Zelda and they're in other stuff.
Yeah. It's just a cultural touchstone that we don't necessarily have.
That's what interests me about this stuff.
When we say horse face, it's mostly kind of the long shape of it, and it's shifted down to his shoulder like G. Birkin or something like that. But its eyes, they're offset and kind of stretched. His features, from the nose up, are kind of warped, but they're still recognizably human.
Yeah.
Maybe what I'm picking up on as far as it being goofy is that they're recognizably human in a way that makes him look a little bit like he comes from a different art style.
Okay.
Like it's a drawing of a human face that the rest of the game doesn't. That's not how humans look.
Right.
But it's almost like the same way that humans are slightly deformed and like Dishonored or BioShock.
Yeah. It's
exaggerated features, like a caricature.
It's panel 3 and like a transformation fetish comic. Like,
yeah,
my dissertation's on transformation fetish comics.
Yeah, what I'm thinking.
If you just want to do a podcast about that, I'm on.
No, I mean that's not what I mean. I don't mean that it's like partway transformed. I mean that it's like it looks like a drawing from like an Al Hirschfield drawing or something like that. It looks like it's from a different art style.
We didn't talk about Beasthood creeping up the right leg.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because one of the hunter sets that we find here, it says there was an old superstition that Beasthood crept up the right leg.
No.
And Ludwig, it's the right half of him that's beast-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, wow. And then I went back to Central Yharnam and realized that with the cleric beast and the people there, it's actually the left side. So I have no idea if this myth has any basis in the reality of what happened. Or
well, it's right as you look at them.
It's just asymmetry. I don't know.
What if that's what if Ludwig's the origin of that? Like there wasn't. It's a superstition. It's not anything. But they saw what happened to Ludwig.
Yeah,
and that's why
German's missing his right leg as well, which there's been a lot of
it's stage right leg.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this this guy, it's hard to get a silhouette on him, and it's hard to understand because like he's not quadrupedal like most of the beast fights are. He leans into the horse side of this by having kind of a different profile.
It's kind of like the Fly. It's like Ludwig and a horse got in a teleporter and got scrambled.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to go back to Lovecraft, because he's obviously he's a touchstone for this stuff, there's a Lovecraft story called the Dunwich Horror, in which the monster in that is described kind of briefly. And it is described as basically just this mass of legs and mouths and eyes that's dragging itself around. And I kind of thought maybe that might have been an influence on the way Ludwig was designed.
Yeah, I can see it. For sure.
Yeah.
Even and it's so brief that you get to see the Dunwich Horror, but
and there's
I can kind of see it.
A demon called Buer, I think it's Buer, that you see in old grimoires and things, which is that's just a head with a bunch of hoofed legs kind of dragging itself around again. So Ludwig seems like a collision of all kinds of different imagery. Yeah.
This is a really hard fight.
Yes. I like this fight an awful lot, actually. Just because it feels like a response to what I thought and what I supposed and how I felt about beast fights throughout the entirety of the main game of Bloodborne. Because the opening kind of feels like a regular beast fight, right? Very aggressive. It's very much, hey, get into its blind spot where it can't really get to you outside of these kind of reaching behind attacks and do a bunch of damage to them. And then he has this turn kind of halfway through. Is there anything really notable about his for the first phase of this fight that we want to touch on?
That head, the separate leech head, because that's only active in the first phase.
Yeah,
because for anyone who hasn't seen it, he has two heads sprouting from his neck, and then the one of them that we've talked about is the horse face. The other one it's just like a mouth, and inside of it there are these weird they could be eyes. They also could don't Google this if you're squeamish, but if you look at parasite infections in people's mouths where parasites will lay eggs, it kind of looks like that as well.
Yeah, it's got this kind of polyp radial.
Polyp. Yeah, and that head that is sort of dominant in this fight, and it has a vomit attack where it sprays this jet of, I have no idea what it is, out of its mouth. And then once you go into the second phase, that head is not relevant anymore. It doesn't play any further part. So it's almost like the fight is divided in two, because you've got the first half, which is the beast, Ludwig, and then when you get him down to half health, not only does his attack pattern change, but he gets a cutscene and he starts behaving differently, and his name above the health bar also changes.
I love that.
So it's almost like Ludwig the Accursed is the leech head, and Ludwig the Holy Blade is the human horse head. And
he's got this duality.
You've woken up, you've killed the beast. Now Ludwig is awake.
Yeah. I like the second half of the fight. I think the first half of the fight has a lot of bullshit to it.
Definitely.
For reasons that I have talked about all season. And the second half is significantly better. And I love the turn. I wish I didn't have to wait through the first half to get to this fight I actually really like. And it's all silhouette reading and stuff that is hard when someone's attacking with claws in their face and their neck and
And
stuff, as opposed to
particularly
a
his
weapon.
drop attack.
Yeah,
Because if you're not on a high enough level, or you just haven't leveled vitality enough, that will one shot you if you get.
Yep.
And it's they add in a thing where like you can kind of see where he's going because blood drips from the ceiling, but he's such a massive target that
Yeah.
like he'll just collapse. It's actually worse than the amygdala jump attack, because there at least it's just the feet that'll get
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Whereas
He's
with
got a
Ludwig, it's the whole like pile that gets you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ended up, this is one of the 2 boss fights in the DLC I didn't solo. Like I ended up summoning help for this.
Yeah.
Where I would get to the second phase, but I just had was drained of resources by the time I got to the part that like I felt like I could read. We should talk about that cutscene though, because it's awesome.
Yes.
It's like, for me, it's the redeeming factor of this boss fight, which I don't in general like that much, but this made me like it. Because when he's first introduced, he has a sword on his back, but it's not emphasized, and it's not emphasized visually either. Like the camera angle, it's kind of glossed over. But partway through, he does this thing where he says like, "Oh, of course you were there. You were there with me all along," and looks to his sword.
My true mentor, my guiding moonlight.
Yes, yeah, and because this is the Moonlight Greatsword, here it is.
Which, man, when was the last time in a front game this was used against you?
Probably like an Armored Core game or something like that. Because I think you get it in Kingsfield, the last Kingsfield, where we played, and then Kingsfield 2 use it against the M boss as well.
Right. I think maybe Kingsfield 1, but I cannot speak to that.
See, my first experience with the Moonlight was in the first Armored Core. I didn't know Kingsfield existed because I don't think it got a PAL release. So I just assumed this was a reference to Armored Core until I like discovered the internet like 10 years later. Oh, right.
Yeah.
The Moonlight Greatsword is kind of weird with him from a lore perspective, because it introduces yet another kind of thing. The description talks about how there were these tiny sprites in it that he followed and was fascinated by. What are those? What do you think, Richard?
Well, what happens is it's got where are my notes? He finds the arcane sword. He doesn't like he just finds it somewhere, probably in the chalices. So it's not like it wasn't built by the workshop. And then when he finds it, he finds the guidance rune at the same time. So the implication I got is that when he picks up the sword, the guidance rune like zaps into his mind. That makes sense because he talks about it being his guiding moonlight and how like the sprites in the sword are emptying him of his fears. The guidance rune gives you bonus rally.
Right.
And that makes sense because we get a reference to the sprites kind of emptied Ludwig of his fears in the hunt. And I read an interview with, it wasn't Miyazaki, it was someone else who worked on the game, where he said that Miyazaki sees the health bar not as like your physical stamina, but as your will to go on. It's one of those things that would have been nice to know in the actual game.
We've had that pop up in some appendices.
Interviews to figure out what's happening. But like that seems to be what the rally system is. It's not you're getting health back. It's when you get hit, if you're able to land a counter, that like you're reinvigorated. So it seems to be that's what the Moonlight and the Guidance are doing to Ludwig, that he's in this. He's like, he says after you kill him, he talks to you a bit, and he talks about how he's steeped in blood and steeped in beasts, and he kept going on. So it seems to be like that's what the Moonlight Sword was doing to him. It was giving him this strength to carry on in the midst of all these hunts.
Yeah. And the
like,
sword was mimicked by the Holy Blade.
Yeah, this is really interesting because the Holy Blade and the rifle, both descriptions, it says it is said that the sword was employed by Ludwig, and then it is said that Ludwig used this rifle. Now we know that's not that it was just said. Ludwig actually used the Moonlight Sword, and given the size of Ludwig and the fact that what he's wearing looks like the church giant's garb, it looks maybe he also used the church cannon instead of Ludwig's rifle, and these are just like small portable versions of them.
Yeah, and it just kind of passed down through generations or whatever.
Yeah, but like
the
size is all totally inconsistent because like when Ludwig uses the Moonlight Greatsword, it's enormous, and when we use it, it's portable. So I don't know what to make of that.
I feel like that just kind of happens. in these games. That
Yeah.
happens with whenever you can
Yeah.
get like a boss weapon.
Because like there's this weird sort of there's like a sort of implication in his design that he might actually have been a giant because he's got the church giant garb on and he's got this gigantic sword, and like the Ludwig's rifle and Ludwig's holy blade are like smaller versions of stuff we see giant things wielding, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this fight changes substantially because this sword, as you'll discover when you eventually wield it, if you choose to, has a ranged aspect to it, just like it does in other From games. It sends out these waves of energy, and he kind of takes on this more upright posture, and all of a sudden, this is a sword fight against a giant.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, combined with some aspects of this beast fight. He still moves around like a beast does, but he is much more versatile. And this is where it really regains its interest. This is where it becomes something beyond just the normal beast fight that we've seen so far.
It's almost like it's positioned as a, I mean, I guess, when you fight a Lawrence later, but if you didn't fight Lawrence later, its position as the first boss fight is almost transitioning you out of beast into these cool dual fights.
Yeah.
It's almost like literally bridging the gap between them, because the next spoiler, we're about to fight the best fight in the game after this. The next boss fight is so goddamn good.
I'm sorry, the failures?
Oh no, I'm sorry. The one.
Okay.
I thought you were being sarcastic.
No. I don't actually hate the failures. They're called the living failures, which I like a lot. Like that's an evocative name.
Cool. But yeah, like this could be seen as a transition away from the beast into that. And, Lawrence, the other beast fight in the DLC is kind of a return to form. But this definitely kind of made me maybe like it. I like the goofy horror aspect of this. Gary, we can disagree on that. That's fine. But yeah, like the fact that this kind of does that meta stuff. It has a mid-boss cutscene to it. It changes the name and kind of brings back. It could be seen as a little bit fan servicey, but I love fighting against the Moonlight Blade.
I like the voice actor. Yep. With the delivery in that cutscene. It has that kind of desperate gratitude of talking to the sword. That I think is really kind of affecting and good. Like, I like that part. Don't let anybody literally cut off one of his heads and I think he's great. Like, it's literally his dumb long face that I think is stupid. Everything else is great. That's the one thing. And then what that's the big stupid thing that's going to do here in a minute too. As a head doesn't work for me.
Well, there's precedence in the series.
And there's like kind of shades of Sir Alon in this. The way Sir Alon was bewitched by the sword that he found, and it led him. That's another cultural motif thing, the idea of like the sword overwhelms you. And
also the design too, the fact that this does appear to be kind of this amalgamation. It is a little bit of a cat dog. The way that he is mixed up and has these different ends of different things.
He's got all of the terror potential and coolness of design of cat dog.
Have you noticed that there are no cat beasts in the whole game?
I was kind of hoping there would be some cat people.
I was hoping there wasn't, because I like cats and I wouldn't be able to hurt them.
We're all cat boys here. Like we can agree, but I kind of wanted them to be cool and like they're the good beasts.
What are the cool beasts that just invite you to their house to eat turkey and giblet friskies and like chill out with them?
It's just a different game. I'm sorry, I'm talking about the Bloodborne licensed version of Nico Atsume.
Of Mappy, after you eventually beat Ludwig, either with summons or without summons or what have you, his head hangs out and is on the ground, and it asks you if you're wearing. Did you have this, Cole? Because it says in the notes, it says it asks you if hunters are still good and honorable. Did you know that it only does that if you're wearing church clothing?
Yeah, I just forgot to make a note of that.
Because I didn't know it. I just saw it in YouTube videos.
He refers to you as hunter of the church. When you'll say, hunter of the church, tell me. It's like Adela.
It's cool that you can kind of trick him, like that.
And if by cool you mean tragic, then
it's kind of cruel. Well, you can make him believe that the church is still good. You can give him some hospice care.
I like to him. I'll ameliorate his pain and suffering. It's fine.
Yeah, whereas I wanted to rob all of his dignity before death. The so he asks you that, and you can either tell him the truth that the church hunters have gone the way of shit, or that they're still good and noble.
Yeah.
Um,
Really, really interesting like dialogue if you tell him that the church hunters have gone to shit. Because he says something like, "Oh, then I was just a beast possessed degenerate as my detractors made clear."
yeah,
Made
So
eminently clear.
yeah. So there was friction in the church about whether Ludwig was the right guy for the job and whether like maybe even whether the church needed its own hunters.
hmm
Yeah, because prior to that, they're not part of the church. They seem to be an
No.
independent organization.
They
Yeah.
they rise up from the for like the populace. They're commonplace, right?
Well, this is the odd thing because we get the reference like hunters a ten a penny, right? But the ones that we find, that presumably the ten a penny ones, because they have the old hunter's garb on, they're using hunter weapons from the hunter workshop, like the beast cutter and the safe and things like that. So that implies they're part of that workshop. Like, let's go with the boom hammer. So he's got connections to the powder kegs. That's totally different to what we have now, where there are these quote unquote hunters in Yarnum, but they're just like, it's just a civilian rabble with just
it's,
like
the
pitchforks
huntsmen.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So it looks like the hunters like were like an actual big deal. They don't big and oh god, it's one of the Ludwig related items says that it's actually Ludwig that starts just like recruiting civilians to form militia.
Yes, that it
Yeah,
is
so-
specifically what lets you open the gate to the front door into
the
yeah.
Hunter Chief emblem.
Yeah.
So it's like the
Yeah, it started off as something more well
Yeah.
regulated.
yeah, it starts off as like an actual organization, then the church it gets kind of folded into the church, and then after that it's just sort of forgotten about apart from Gurman.
Yeah.
hmm
And I love the idea because so much of what we've seen so far throughout the main portion of the game is kind of the result of this political frisson, right? Between all these different kind of ideas of the right way to do things. And even that is kind of borne out here. And what we've seen, and what we know throughout the entire DLC, like this is chronologically one of the last things to happen, right? We are in Yharnam proper. We are looking at a vestige of the church as it exists right now, closest to what we can kind of interpret as the most recent beast scare, right?
Yeah, and like it also helps you figure out where Gurman fits in, because when Gurman's asleep, you can hear him call out to Lawrence. So he obviously thinks Lawrence is still out there somewhere. He doesn't realize how bad things have gotten for Lawrence.
Right.
And given the state we find Lawrence in the DLC, that seems to be like that would have already happened by now. Yeah.
Yeah, because Ludwig is alive and Lawrence is
That's the
comatose.
other weird thing. Like, Ludwig's in the nightmare. So did Ludwig die and pass on to the nightmare, or was he locked up in the nightmare because the church didn't want anyone to know about him?
Yeah, I mean, I could see either.
Yeah, I mean,
Either
or.
he's,
Like-
he's pretty beastly when we find him.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
we're not like talking about stuff that's later on, but
Right.
just briefly, like this area we're in is connected to basically the church's prison. It's like
Right.
their
Yeah.
version of Guantanamo Bay, where all the hunters are locked up that they don't want, that they think are dangerous, and we're right next to that. So it could be that Ludwig has just been locked up in this area. He wouldn't fit in a cell, obviously, because he's too big. So they've just dumped him here, and
Yeah.
That
there's
makes
the whole
sense.
thing about again, going back to the old hunter set that we find, it's like one day the hunters vanished. So it's not even like they died. They just disappeared one day. So it's like, did the amygdala like crawl around grabbing them or something? It's like, did they go there in their sleep when they were dreaming? It's really not made clear what actually happened. But it seems to be this hunter rapture thing happened and they all vanished.
They're the
Yeah, I don't know.
leftovers.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything to suggest like what actually the mechanics of it.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of that kind of disappearance or diaspora between them.
Yeah. Oh no, it's on the old hunter set. It's like, it's not like other sets in the game because we find it in pieces. We don't find the whole thing. And like each item of the set has a different description. And like one of them specifically says that like one day all the hunters disappeared. One day the hunters disappeared and Yarnamites began to whisper of the hunter's sin. So yeah.
Yeah.
Is that on the decorative set? Let me see here.
I think it's just the regular one. It's the one that you find in the first like Cathedral Plaza area.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know which part of the set. I think it might be the chest piece.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
I don't know what to make of any of this.
Yeah.
And there's this sort of this like meta I don't understand thing, because this is the nightmare. So nothing here is beholden to physical laws to begin with.
Right, right. And I'm not expecting all of the ends to meet exactly. You know?
Yeah, and like it makes me wonder if like the deformed form of Ludwig, whether that was actually what he looked like as a beast, or whether he's kind of further transformed because he was in the nightmare for so long.
Yeah.
You know, like in Mensis, you find like there's the crows with dog heads and the dogs with crow heads and pigs with spider heads and like spiders with people heads. And like those things don't seem to exist outside of the nightmare. They're like something that happens there. So Ludwig could be like something similar, maybe.
Previously, we had talked about the dogs and pigs' heads and spider pigs and the like as being like a lesser entry in the Simpsons mythology. And in addition to being a lesser entry in the Simpsons mythology, as being something about like your perceptions that you're bringing there. Because a lot of the things in the nightmare seem to be mashups of things you've seen. Yeah. Right? So you have
me, it's like I think we all differ on like how we see the nightmare. Because like I'm like, having like read the Lovecraft stuff that seems to be like being riffed on in Lovecraft's writing, the nightmare / dream world. It's like a place. It's not an actual dream.
Yeah, right. No, we're on the same.
So but I mean, that's just because that's where I was coming from. And like, if you don't come from that, you're going to have a different interpretation, and it's really not clear like who's right or if either side's right.
No, I mean, we're not as far apart as maybe you think. Like that's definitely where I'm coming from with things too, is that it's it's not just a dream, it's a different dimension, but something that comes up in the stories a little bit with, in Dream Quest with King Kyriandes or what have you, but it happens a lot in the tabletop game, is this idea that it is an actual place. You can also kind of affect it. Yeah. Like there's this like ability to dream and change things. Yeah. So I definitely think it's actually a place. I just think that it is something that is more mutable.
Yep, exactly.
That's how it works in, because like the Kuraness, the character you're talking about, he's a king in the Dreamlands, and because he's a king, he's able to like shape the world around him to resemble places he remembers. He's able to like dream up like a castle that his ancestors lived in, and a little lodge for himself, and he's able to dream up a village and things. So it seems like they're very mutable. But then there's this whole question about like, is it being controlled by the like nightmare host people, or is it the great ones build it because they kind of take a snapshot of something and then recreate it imperfectly? Because like the impression I got from the hunter's dream is like that's the moon presence just saw the workshop and was like, oh, okay, that's where hunters live. So it's just like it's just worked up a little like bootleg of the workshop. And in Mensis, like, I don't know where the Mensis place is supposed to be in the real world. It might be nowhere. But it looks to me like, if I had to guess, I'd say that's part of Yahar'gul that we never go to, that kind of got lifted out and recreated. So, like, if Mensis summoned a great one at Yahar'gul, then it would have seen, oh, okay, this is where Mensis hang out. I'll make a version of this for them. That's kind of the impression.
So there's like oh, I hear you like race cars, so I built you a race car bed.
No, it's like, you know, having a pet lizard. You try to recreate the area for it. You have the heat right and everything.
Right. You put a stick with a leaf in there to make it think of
home. The
Cravatat
of Mensis.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I could see it like just me, because I'm an agent of compromise. I could see it being a mixture of both. Like you know, you bring your own perception to it, and it is a mutable space that responds to, you know, it is a location that that bends to match the whims of whoever comes to it, specifically because there are parts of it that the viewer's mind has to fill in.
Yeah. It could be there. I don't see it as mutually exclusive either.
Yeah.
Where it's like there's elements of both, but definitely don't misunderstand. Like I never thought this was a dream that wasn't real.
Right.
You know, I just thought that it doesn't necessarily adhere to the same kind of laws of immutability.
If you die in the nightmare, you die in real life.
It's true. And you die in the second nightmare. You die in the extra double nightmare.
It is unending nightmare, death forever, mirrors within mirrors. Yeah.
Do you have any kind of final things to say about Ludwig? As far as if you leave him, if you leave his head and come back,
Yeah.
Simon will come and put it out of its misery.
Yeah, that's if you answer. Does he do that regardless, or does it happen if you answer no and then he goes crazy?
I don't
'Cause
actually know the
I
trigger
think
for
if
it.
you say the church are fine, he like the head will just stay there, and Simon won't kill it unless you
My
say
work
no.
is done. Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise it does this big neighing thing.
Oh yeah, he sounds like Homer Simpson.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, when
It's
when he's arguing with Mr. Burns about the union rules, he lies on the floor and runs around. He's like,
that is what it sounds like.
turns it. I'm going to put a marker there so you can cut it in, and also Homer Simpson doing the Three Stooges running in a circle on the floor.
yeah.
It is. I just hope that I'm happy to respectfully disagree with you about the effectiveness of Ludwig Cole, but the fact that reminds me of Homer Simpson is part of why that doesn't work for terror
Right.
purposes for
but,
me.
Gary, humor and terror are so innately related in our minds, you know?
Yeah, yeah. The Simpsons are not. Like I don't. Other than that, Flesh Bart. Like the
Maybe
real
they're
life.
like easing you into the broccoli head rune.
Yeah.
Like just making everything slightly stupid. So when you finally unlock the broccoli head, it's like, okay,
Yeah, I'm on board with it.
I'm not.
Yeah,
It's like slowly getting into a hot bath.
To be fair, Gary, this wasn't like I was playing Amnesia or Silent Hill 3. I didn't have to pause this cutscene and go into the other room and talk to my grandma so I could get my head back on my shoulders to face the challenges ahead. No, I just
terror. I like substitute in like cool.
okay.
Like whether I think it's cool. Yeah.
You want to talk about what Simon says when he kills Ludwig?
Yeah.
What does he say?
Because he says, he gives you the Moonlight Greatsword. And he says, this is Ludwig's guiding light, the blinding thread that led and misled that consummate hero. So it's, yeah. The sword seems to have like overwhelmed him and it like drove him on to do, like it's like it drove him on to keep fighting. And because he was fighting so much, maybe that's what led to the beasthood taking over because he was so drunk with blood.
I could see that. Like inadvertently, it was a contact blood high.
Like going back to like Alon and the idea of like the cursed sword that like compels you. Because one of the things you get around cursed swords in Japanese folklore is the idea that there'll be a sword that the sword will drive you to kill. Like
once this is drawn, it must taste blood.
Yeah, yeah, or even like it's not even if it's drawn, just having the sword on you, it starts overwhelming you and wanting you to go out and kill.
Right.
So it looks like the Moonlight might have been something similar to that. And if he finds it in the chalices, which I'm just going to assume because I don't know where else he would have found it, then like it could have been a Thumerian weapon. We know that the Thumerians have beast issues because there's beasts all over the Thumeru chalices. And presumably they can't all have been like people who went in the chalices and transformed from the surface. So this could have been like a weapon that was used to rid Thumeru of beast infestation at some point.
What's funny about it? It's moonlight, and the moon in werewolf myth, obviously it will transform them, right? And this is being used. This elemental force that transforms people into beasts is also being used to slay them for the force of good. Yeah,
the whole thing about fear that I completely forgot until now, because when the Moonlight Sword is described as it's emptying Ludwig of his fears, right? And that's presumably what led to him becoming a beast. But then when you talk to Eileen, she's all about like, well, fear is what separates us from beasts.
Yeah.
But here you have fear is what's, we need fear in our hearts to not be beasts. Then Ludwig is emptied of his fears.
Yeah. Well, he's emptied of fears because he's blinded by this tiny light. If you talk to him and you're not wearing the church garb, he says, "Good hunter, have you seen the thread of light? Just a hair, a fleeting thing. Yet I clung to it, steeped as I was in the stench of blood and beasts." He didn't know what it was. He didn't, like, as though this was a sense of regret. And this is what leads into the Homer Simpson whooping.
Yeah, I think that is itself another like hell motif, because there's a story about a guy who's trapped in Buddhist hell, and he's Buddha. This is going to become relevant later on. Buddha is in paradise, and he looks down through the water in paradise, and he sees the guy trapped in hell, and then he lowers a thread down that the guy attempts to climb out of hell on, and it's described as being a thread of light.
Yeah.
And I don't know there, because I don't have the Japanese text of the Old Hunters yet, whether the way it's calling it a thread of light is just a translation coincidence, or whether that is maybe intentional.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
because there are other parts too where going back to the fear real quick, that like fear is a hallmark of humanity, or is a necessary thing for human nature and
fear
safety.
the old blood.
Yeah, totally, exactly. Like that's a big part of it, is this idea of like, so that's interesting, the way that kind of ties together.
And then you have Amelia, and then later on her speech is repeated where it's saying the blood soothes our fears.
Yeah.
Well, and also Bergenworth turns blood
into
into sedative, right? Which immediately turns you, like the sedative, obviously, like you're just popping a Z-bar and you're no longer afraid of anything, right?
And it ties into the whole thing about your life bar actually being your will to go on, because the blood vials that you use, it says in the description that it's not that actually the blood is coursing through your veins, it's that taking a blood vial is very invigorating. It like gives you a second wind. So that's
eliminating some of your fear.
It's like Max Payne.
Yeah.
All good stuff.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That's pretty much Ludwig. We're going to find out more about what's going on here for sure. But that's good. We did some good work, guys. some interesting kind of, at least if kind of thematic echoes and the like, kind of going throughout. With this, you can get the weapon. The weapon is really good if you're built for it, is my understanding.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
I was doing like double-digit damage. Like it's really bad if you're not built for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna move on after this. So Richard, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's been really great. Thank you. And hopefully, Dark Souls 3 rolls around. If you're equally invested, you'll come back.
I hope so too.
That would be awesome. Can you remind people online where they can find you?
Well, my channel title is a bilingual pun that I'm not even going to try explaining. So if you just type Bloodborne up close into YouTube and hit search, you should find probably something by me. They have a red title card. You'll recognize it.
It'll be in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah.
And also the channel title is a Metal Gear reference, which I really appreciate. So,
no, it wasn't supposed to be a Metal Gear reference.
No, oh wow,
no.
I mean,
this is when people are like saying like, I never expected anyone to care about what I did, and it's clearly an affectation. Here, it's obvious that like I've put no thought into any aspect of my YouTube channel whatsoever.
I thought we were going to be like Kindred Spirits, like, hey, Militaris on Frontier, like, yeah, let's go.
There was a terrible old British game show called Jouis Sans Frontières, as in Games Without Borders. But if you read it phonetically, it was Jerks Sans Frontières.
There we go. So I'm getting to the heart of it.
JUX. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not good with branding.
Oh no, I'm just revealing how uncultured I am. Yeah, no, it's fine.
Your mind immediately went to the Metal Gear reference rather than Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah, well, the Metal Gear thing, I saw that as a reference to it's Soldiers Without Borders instead of Doctors Without the Borders. Yeah. No.
I bought Phantom Pain. I've not played it yet because the only PS4 game I have played all year is Bloodborne.
Oh yeah.
It's next on my hit list.
I'm really glad that I finally recorded all the footage I need because I can finally just anything
play other
else.
games.
Well, fortunately, MSF is more of a Peace Walker thing. So. Man. But yeah, I really appreciate the level of detail and research that you brought to this.
Thank you.
I wouldn't have known about any of that afterlife kind of stuff if you hadn't brought it to our attention.
It's the kind of stuff you can find on Richard's channel. Recommended. Next week we're going to be talking about the research hall, the little jail under the research hall, and my favorite boss fight, the Living Failures. JK, up through Maria. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be joined by Josh Garrity from the Kane and Rince podcast. I'm so excited about that. And yeah, there's still plenty of time if you're listening to this to write in.
Yeah.
So hit us up at Duckfeed.tv/contact if you have thoughts about the DLC.
We don't have a specific date for a deadline on this, just because our recording schedule is mercurial. So like if there is
Roughly
a
2 weeks
deadline,
from now.
yeah, roughly 2 weeks from now, watch for like on Facebook, but the sooner the better is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
We already have a lot of responses. I'm going to say ahead of time, like, please don't have your feelings hurt if we don't include it, just because we have just a ton of people who've come out to talk already. So
And as always, the way to ensure or make it more likely that your response gets read is that it's great to just say how much you like the thing, but kind of individual impressions, theories, and kind of stories and stuff. I don't think we've ever not read something that involved a story from childhood. I think if it has to do with like
Gary, don't give them the cheat codes. Come on.
Yeah, it's out there. It's open. Information wants to be free, Cole. Yeah, so it's if it's something that is a personal story or personal anecdote, it is more likely to get read. But it's going to be a long appendix, so not everything is going to get caught.
Yep.
We're also mere minutes away from hammering out our off season.
Yeah.
So people who are wondering what we're going to do between Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, we are
so
spiraling.
soon. That's
We're
like
almost there. We almost
tomorrow.
have it.
Tomorrow is when that's happening. Oh God.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's probably about it. Do we have
Yep.
any final thoughts or anything?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything.
We did. Yeah, it was definitely super thorough. So
Old Hunter Henriette is awful.
Yeah.
I summoned her to Ludwig, and she died almost immediately.
It's not a net gain versus what she
actually,
adds to the health.
Volta.
Yep.
The way that Volta changes depending on his state in the waking world.
oh
Or do you
yeah,
want to-
the way his summon
That's
does.
like a later thing. Yeah. He will take off his helmet, and he's called Volta. He's called Volta Master of the League. He wears the helmet. If you complete his quest line and he dies, then when you summon him, he's Volta the Beast Eater, and his helmet's off, and you can see his face looks like, I was expecting him to have a milky eye, maybe because of the scourge, but both his eyes are the same.
Yeah.
Because
He's a pretty boy.
Yeah. I actually I did this. I made a milky-eyed character because I wanted to have someone who looked like they were suffering from the scourge. So that's built into the character creation, but they don't use it here. So and that's like really because it's like you in the Hunter's Nightmare. Are you like incarnated there in an earlier form, like in your prime maybe? So we get like young, like kind of Bishonen Volta at the peak of him, like as the Beast Eater, as opposed to like kind of middle-aged, like coughing, sick Volta that's in the waking world.
God, I hope I'm 17 in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I don't. I was 17. Like, what an asshole.
Well, I mean, mentally, whatever, but like
Yeah.
physically.
If you can be dead in the real world and be alive in the nightmare to be summoned, there's no reason why you couldn't be alive and also like an earlier state.
Yeah. And like vice versa, because you can like summon Henrik, who's
Yeah.
dead. Yeah.
Yeah. Could absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, do think about. And then like the absolute final, if if you're listening to this, if you want to support us financially, you can head on over to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Big help. Yeah. And I guess until next time, Cole, what should they do?
Oh, have mercy upon us.
Umbasa.
Umbasa.
Yay.
Yeah, thank you for participating.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon